Good evening and welcome to the January 26th meeting of the Select Board. This open meeting of the Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with amendments of to the open meeting law passed by the Massachusetts legislature and signed into law by Governor Healy, which permit fully remote meetings of public bodies. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. Public participation is only required during a public hearing, though the chair may utilize their own discretion to provide an avenue for public comment during other items on the meeting agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and aired live, and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that people may be able to see you. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along with the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each member by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking time to identify yourself. If and when there's an opportunity for public comment, I will make such a statement. Members of the public wishing to make a comment should raise their hand to notify the meeting host that you wish to be heard. Please ensure that you are appropriately named so that we may notify you when it is your turn to speak. When called on, the host will unmute you and permit you to speak. You'll be muted when done. If you are calling on the phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, and when appropriate, you will be unmuted and asked to speak. Finally, all votes will be conducted by roll call vote. In order to prevent disturbances or interruptions, only the meeting host can share their screen, and all persons on the call are muted until being recognized by the chair. Additionally, the chat function has been disabled. With that, I'm going to do introductions just slightly differently. I will call out each person's name and they can just say I or here. Adele Coughlin. Ron Cohane.
Here.
Eric Eldridge.
Here.
Jackie Gilfus.
Here.
Thank you. And then Colin Loisel.
Here.
And Sean Walsh.
Here.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So we can go right on to the agenda. First item. Mr. Eldridge, do you want to?
For the meeting minutes?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the regular session meeting minutes for January 5th, 2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I would call for a roll call vote. Select person Coughlin.
I think she's on mute.
Yep.
Give us a thumbs up, Adele.
She is unmuted, but we can't hear her. I'm not sure if the microphone switched.
That's fine. Just wave. Select person Eldridge.
In favor.
Select person Cohane.
In favor.
Select person Gilfus.
In favor.
And I am also in favor. That is 5-0-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve but not release the executive session meeting minutes for January 5th, 2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Once again, we'll do a roll call vote. Select person Coughlin. Select person Eldridge.
In favor.
Select person Cohane.
I will abstain because I was not here for that meeting.
Okay, so noted. Select Person Gilfus.
In favor?
I am also in favor. That is 401. Okay. Next item is public comment time. Are there any members of the public, Colin, that have raised their hands that wish to speak?
I am looking at the list. I'll give it a second to see if anyone raises their hand, but as of right now, no one has.
Yeah, well, let's just give that a moment because of the convoluted method that we're doing this.
And we do have one hand raised.
Okay.
Representative Vonna Howard has her hand raised. I will allow her to speak. Just give her a second.
Thank you.
And she should be unmuted now.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good evening. Hope you're warm and safe in this weather that we just had. And thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and member of the Select Board, for this opportunity. My name is Vonna Howard. I reside in downtown Lowell with my family, my husband, my 2 children, and my 2 dogs. I'm currently a state representative serving the 17 Middlesex district. This is my 2nd term as a state representative. I'm currently serving my 2nd term on the House Ways and Means Committee, the Higher Ed, Community Development and Small Businesses, and Racial Equity, Civil Rights, and Inclusion, all the committees. Just briefly, I know I only have about 2 minutes, I believe, briefly on my background. At age 9, I survived the killing fields of Cambodia. My dad, my 3 siblings, and my grandparents died there during that 4 years of the genocide. I arrived in the U.S. at 11 as a refugee, and I didn't speak a word of English. When my mom and I arrived here, it wasn't easy. I faced homelessness, hunger, and domestic violence. But this community, the United States, Massachusetts, lifted me up and helped my family survive. And this is who I am and why I have dedicated my life ever since. And I chose public service. My experience includes working for the district attorney's office, both Middlesex and Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, for about 13 years. And then I went to work for Congresswoman Nikki Saunders' office in her congressional office here in the city of Lowell for about 12 years, which included all the towns and city in the first Middlesex now, Lowell, Dracut, Tyngsborough, Tyngsborough, and Pepperell, and many other towns and cities. And then the Lowell Community Health Center. And I have volunteered. I also volunteered with many nonprofits in the area and the community. And so my lived background has always been about helping people. My jobs has always been about helping people and making positive change. And so ever since, I have lived and learned to be resilient and to make good things happen with the help and support of this community. And that's why I'm running as I did, just as I did as a state representative. And I'm committed to continuing the late Senator Ed Kennedy's work as well. I was his representative. He was my state senator. When he ran for the state senate in 2018, I was there. I was there for him. I was there for him again for all his re-elections. And I will be there and so I want to help, to continue to help others and making a bigger impact. And I will be there for the people of the First Middlesex and also for this community and across our Commonwealth. And because of my lived background, I understand, I can relate to the struggles and the difficulties everyone is going through right now. As a representative, I have been there for my constituent, the 17 Middlesex district. And as a state representative in the last 5 years, my 3rd term, I have secured millions of dollars for education, for families, for mental health, for substance abuse treatment, and for infrastructure, like police and public parks. And so if I was lucky to be your state senator, my first actions, it's just some, would be to work with our governor to continue to lower utility costs. And that's right now it's just too expensive for many of our families, for our seniors, for our veterans, and to work on affordability and issues that most affect our seniors, our veterans, and to continue with the work that State Senator Ed Kennedy did to assist suburban communities by strengthening local aid, which are right now unfair and putting budgets under stress. And so I will be there as your senator. I was successful with your help. I will continue to listen with my heart and mind and will serve with intentions towards serving the impact of those that we care about most. With your support, I pledge to continue to work building trust, partnerships, and a delivery system to do my best to improve the lives of constituents and families in the First Middlesex District and across our Commonwealth. I humbly ask for your vote on February 3rd, 2026. I want to say again, thank you so much for having me, and I hope you warm and be well and safe. I know we're expecting more snow, and so, well, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Loisel, is there anyone else that wants to speak?
There is nobody else with their hand raised, so I think we're good on that
Okay.
item.
Then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the public hearing. TCI LHE LLC 440 Middlesex Road, units D13, E23, F1, and F11 on premises all alcohol and common vittler licenses applications. This is being
Thank-
continued from our January 5th meeting.
Thank you. I am just promoting. Sam Park is with us, Zach is with us, as well as Attorney Nicosia. So we'll just give it a second for them to come through as panelists, and I'll turn it over to Sean.
That's great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to reread the memo from your last meeting if you would like. If not, I'll just preface the continued hearing. The board heard from the attorney for the 4 applications at 440 Middlesex Road back in your first meeting in January. At the applicant's request, they asked to continue this hearing so that the applicant could address the board in person. Nothing has changed with the applications in the meantime. We spoke to all departments with jurisdiction over the applications and received no negative comments. If you need any further information, I am happy to provide that. But as Colin mentioned, the
Okay.
applicant is here this evening.
Yeah, and we don't need to reread that memo. I think nothing has changed, and it was only since the last meeting. I think it'd be better if we just move on to the applicant.
Perfect.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hope you're enjoying all the snow our lovely town has gotten today.
As much as you are.
Yeah. Thanks for continuing to this evening so that my folks can attend. I have Sam Park here, who you all well know, very valued business partner for the town of Tyngsborough and the principal of the 440 Middlesex Plaza and the principal of the applicant. And I also have Zach Lehan, who is the proposed licensed manager on the license. He also happens to be the project manager for the plaza redevelopment as well. As we discussed last time, this license holding entity applicant is either going to be a transition entity to the ultimate tenants that will operate the restaurants, or in the alternative, it's going to act as the license owner with a managing agent. Either way, we're going to be coming back in front of you for those subsequent approvals. But I wanted the board to feel comfortable that the applicant has, a defined plans and a defined timeline, and that these aren't just going to be, pocket licenses, which certainly they're not intended to be. As you can see, the plaza redevelopment is moving along very quickly, but nobody can speak to the business track and the business plans better than my folks that are here with us. So if it would please the board, I'd like to turn it over to Sam Park to talk about what's going on at the plaza and the plan for these licenses.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Sam, are you with us?
He's on mute.
Oh, you gotta unmute yourself, I think.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. My name's Sam Park. I'm the principal in charge of the 440 Plaza, soon to be known as the Edge District. And I'll go into a little of that more out of perhaps not pertaining to the licenses, but it's an interesting aspect of our project if you care. We are very excited about bringing, the whole premise of this plaza has been to bring restaurants and entertainment to this area, almost serving, what is now a very predominant retail corridor. There have been some challenges in securing some of the tenants. So even though we're moving forward with our construction, it's fair to say we've been hit by a lot of delays over the course of time. Some of them, starting with the COVID, the impact that had on restaurants, the impact, higher interest rates have had on some of our tenants. So in a nutshell, we really have hoping to have more than 4 more restaurants and entertainment facilities, but thought that was a fair number to go after at this point. And the reason we need these licenses, as Peter may have shared with you, is it's becoming increasingly difficult for many of our restaurants to secure financing. So we are stepping up as of this year to actually backstop some of the restaurants and basically provide a funding vehicle so that they can get the financing they need to open. So with that, our lenders and our investors want to make sure that if we arrange the financing for ourselves or for our tenants, that in fact we have absolute certainty on the licenses. Now, I am one who is very sensitive to the idea of pocketing licenses. That's not our intention. So, we can be as candid as we can be about our intention is to bring on restaurateurs that are really well qualified to sort of do this. And unfortunately, we may be partners in some of these ventures in order to, give them the backstop they need on the money. Our general range is around, we are going to be investing between $500,000 and $1 million per restaurant. Obviously, our preference would be to have the restaurants finance their own way. But it's so critical to us to have restaurants and entertainment concepts. So we have basically the 4 most critical at this point is basically something akin to an Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza, something that we know is just as a quick, casual, but elegant place to have good pizza. Maybe in addition to that, and I can go through, I actually just got off the phone, Peter, with a gentleman that we've done business with in the past on restaurants. He wants to do a farm fresh concept that would also take one of the licenses. He currently owns Salt and Stone in Somerville, if you wanted to Google them. And then we have, in addition, that one of our existing tenants, we tend to like tenants that we've had because we know that they can pay rent, frankly, from Great Road Kitchen, looking at the space as well. In addition, we've had we think it's absolutely critical that we bring in one more entertainment restaurant food concept, something like X Golf. We would have actually had them under construction and open. We finished their building last year. Unfortunately, the owner of the enterprise passed away unexpectedly, and therefore it kind of set his estate into a sort of a little bit of craziness. So we're looking to replace that operator. We have potential partners that we are comfortable with going into business on the X Golf concept, but we're also exploring some of the newer entertainment concepts, for example, like Spin, which is a ping pong / restaurant concept. So if you're to go through the buildings, we have building C, which is, I know it sounds, I'm not a ping pong guy, but I guess there's movies coming out shortly, so it might drive a lot of traffic. But, building C has Tavern the Square. It's doing phenomenally well. And while the Nash may grab some of the patrons, it doesn't grab a lot of the locals and employees because they just frankly aren't there to gamble. They're there to, basically connect, wine, dine. So they're doing very, very well. Then in building D, we would have basically what we hope to be the Toscanos types Italian concept. They're one group that actually I'm not supposed to share names of potential candidates, but they are they are looking for us to backstop their financing so that they can open. We do have a couple alternatives to Toscano's that may be better suited for it. Then in Building E, which is where Metro Rock just opened, and Player One has been operating. Candidly, Player One deserves some credit because they've been open while we've been building. And I'm sure it's, not the perfect marketing plan for them, but we've worked with them to kind of absorb some of the pain of opening during construction. So there's a corner spot there right on what we call the keyhole, which we think is ideal for a farm fresh concept. So that's the one that a gentleman, Sean Olson, actually from Salt and Stone, is coming up literally this Friday to walk the site with us, and hopefully we'll have that. Now, lastly, we have Taka, which is actually under construction. It will be a full Asian sushi and teppanyaki type, grill. They have operated for almost 10 years at our Littleton Plaza, and they're ready to expand. They serve great food, and it's reasonably priced. And then finally, we would have the one at the very end facing the cinema, which would be what we hope to be another golf venue or ping pong concept. And we may actually be a partner in that concept at this point, because we're pretty bullish on the fact that that type of use is perfect for our center. And if we own it and can control it, it's, it won't run out of, money basically. So that's a good sign. It's funny because this project, although we're moving forward with construction, there have been literally 2.5 years of delays that were beyond anyone's foresight, because of both COVID, then financing, then the lack of building supplies. And now everything is sort of back in swing. So we're moving forward. If you've been up there recently, you'll see that all the buildings have now been closed in. So our investments out there, we really will need those restaurants either way, even if I have to own 4 of them. And in all cases, just for clarity, Zach Lehan is our project manager, and I look for him to basically the business operations, oversee any restaurants that we co-invest in when we get up there. I'd just like to be behind the bar, retired, pouring drinks for everybody, but he will be overseeing the business partners. But in each restaurant, we will have a general food and beverage manager, regardless whether we own it or we, lease the space out to a separate entity. So with that said, we're looking forward to getting these. We really do appreciate the select board's willingness to allow us to show evidence that we control the licenses for our lenders, because it seems to be a chicken and egg problem this day and age. But we're moving forward, and we would hope that our timing would be, obviously we have over $24 million now invested in the plaza. So we would like to get all these things open by the end of the summer. But we probably will be planning on bringing restaurants on, commitments in place, and be back before this board I'd say every 90 days with one of the additional tenants. So immediately we'll be coming back with the Taka representatives to sort of transfer that or be there, basically do it. We would like to continue controlling the license, even if we bring in a separate operator, with the idea that the restaurant activity at the center is critical to the success of the center and the employment. So with that, I'll give it back to Peter.
No, I think Sam gives you the sort of the missing details that I didn't provide to you at the last hearing. And I know the board has a lot of respect for Sam, and Sam has a lot of respect for the board. And, I think the details he's provided has given you the level of specificity and credibility that you probably needed to be able to make a decision today. So again, this is going to be a rolling process. So we're going to be back in front of you. As he mentioned, Taka is going to be really quick because that space is rapidly being built out and they're ready to go. And then the other ones will roll in thereafter. So we'll be frequent flyers before the board for the balance of the year.
That's great. Thank you. Colin, is there anyone that from the public that wishes to speak at the public hearing?
I'm not seeing anyone with their hand raised, but I'll give it a minute. If there's anyone listening in that wants to ask a question or address the board, please raise your hand. We do have a hand raised.
Okay.
Now allowing John to speak. John, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name is John Hong. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Is there any downside for Sam Park to control these licenses? I understand it's like to control the licenses, to expedite, what he's doing, which I'm a total fan of ping pong. I've been asking about ping pong, for a long time. And it just sounds like someone just read my mind. I'm just curious.
John, you're welcome to come partner with me if you like. Actually, you're- it's an
Mr. Chair, if
innovative
you'd like,
concept. I'm not a ping pong player. I don't think I could hit a ping pong ball if I tried. So, but it seems like it's one of the later concepts, and I think it would be a lot of fun to have a place where people can play. But that said, if I may add why we're looking to control, it's not so much to control licenses on who gets them or what happens. What's important for us is that, if we have people operating in the center, and fortunately, 3 of the 4 licenses are already kind of designated by the state legislation that gave those additional licenses for the center. In fact, we've waited till now to even apply for them because of we assumed we would be able to just go straight from the board to the end tenant, but for this financing issue. Our reason for just saying that we'd like to keep this, we don't want to compete with existing restaurants that may be in town or what have you. So we have one of these licenses to stay at the 440, and therefore, or what is now called the Edge District, so that both for our benefit, if not the community's benefit of keeping a critical mass of restaurants in this location, it also prevents these licenses from competing with existing licenses that may be in town. So that's the real driver for us in terms, when I say control, it's probably a little too authoritarian of a word, but it's really meant to be able to preserve, we will never be another retail center to compete with Nashua because of its Massachusetts tax law. But what we can be is essentially the food court entertainment center for all of that corridor and the whole Route 3 North corridor that we're hoping to be. So as part of our branding exercise, we've actually, we waited till this point. Our process is, quite frankly, land the anchors, then land the restaurants, and then land the service retail. So, and the service retail being, shops, services, the possible healthcare, whatever have you, beauty, that type of those services as opposed to dry goods. So from that standpoint, we're now onto that phase of restaurants, got to lock those up. And it seems like over the last year and a half, I think it's really the high interest rates that we see today have caused us to go ahead and make the commitment to finance these entities. So, so the control is, we are really happy if there's people that that would want to come explore an opportunity of doing that up at the 440. So control may be too hard of a word, but it's meant to be to preserve the. When we make this investment in the center, we need to know that the licenses won't move off site to another location that would impact other community members who might have restaurants in place or basically deteriorate the value of our center.
If I could just add one comment, Mr. Chairman. Sam makes an important point that, all 4 licenses are special legislative licenses, 3 specifically earmarked to the plaza, 1 earmarked to the upper end of Middlesex Road, which effectively is earmarked to the plaza, as we discussed the last time. So it's not a situation where we're taking these away from others. We're basically bringing them in for the legislative purpose of which they were enacted, which is to support the development of the plaza. And I think the term control is kind of a misnomer because ultimately we really don't want to control the licenses. We want the end operators of the restaurants that will ultimately be running the businesses. However, for the commitments on the long-term leases and the financing, we need some interim control over the licenses. So
correct. Better said.
Thank you.
Ultimately, the board controls the licenses, so that's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Colin, are there any other members of the public that wish to address the public meeting?
There's nobody else with their hand raised.
Okay, so at this point, we can close the public meeting and then we could open it up to the board for questions. So do we have to do a roll call vote to close the public meeting, Colin?
I'll make a motion.
Yes, but if you're, just a note, as a part of, unless the board is just going to deliberate, if you want additional information from the applicant, you should not close the hearing until the board has the information that they need.
All right, that's fine. Then I will open it up to the board. Select person Coughlin, any questions for the applicant? Somehow we're not hearing you. Sorry. Select person Cohane.
Well, I'd like to thank Sam and Pete for coming tonight. As they've said, this has been a very long process. As part of this process, we looked for those licenses specifically, as they stated, it was for this project. This was needed in order to get this project kind of started. And as Sam said, he's invested 24 million into this already. And I feel very comfortable, giving these licenses to Sam tonight.
Thank you. Select person Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sam, for coming in. Very excited to see some of the progress. I did have a question, and I think I raised this last time with Mr. Nicosia. We talked about not having pocket licenses. Would there be a time period that we could put onto this to say if the licenses aren't used by 12 months, 18 months, is there something that you would be amenable to so that we could go through and help ensure and get to the point where it wouldn't be sitting out there and not be able to be used for others?
Sam and I spoke about this earlier, Sam, if I could. I think we would be comfortable with a 1-year review date. I think you're going to see us a few times before that so that we can give you interim updates. But if for some crazy reason you didn't, I think a year probably makes sense. And to be quite candid, you have that review capability already on annual renewals. So if the annual renewals come up and there's no activity, you can always bring us in for a public hearing at that time at the renewal stage as well. So, but Sam, would you agree that you'd be comfortable with a year?
I would go, yeah, absolutely. I think that would give our lender the comfort they need, that, we need to show, sit or get off the fence, as they say. I would also say, Eric, or Mr. Eldridge, that we're very accessible. If you're concerned about anything not happening, we're not looking to pick a fight with the board over us controlling licenses, so to speak. So if there's any concerns you have, feel free to have Colin set up a meeting or even call me directly, and we'll be glad to, we painfully share the good and the bad as it happens. So if there's things that you think are going in the wrong direction, we're happy to figure out what's the right solution with the board as our partner, as opposed to as our overseers.
Yeah, and that's where I was going. I appreciate that. You've been a great partner to us, and certainly look forward to that continuing. Just wanted to make sure that we covered both ends. Because I'm sure the residents have entrusted us to go through and oversee these types of things. I know Mr. Nicosia has indicated that we could go through and do it as part of the yearly review. The hard part is once the licenses are out there, it's a little bit harder. So that's why I wanted to understand what you felt comfortable with. So personally, I think we should give all 4 of these at this time. And we can just put a stipulation out there that anything that has not been given out after a year, that we will at that point in time review. I'm sure we'll be talking long before then, and we'll have a really good idea if something happens, but at least we'll have a review process, and to make it a little bit easier, because like you, I would not want to have this to be anything that's adversarial, but we do want to protect the interests of the residents.
Good,
Sounds
you.
reasonable.
That was all I had, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. Select person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I share everyone's gratitude for Sam and Peter being here and spending your cold evening with us online. I did want to just go over and make sure that we all are very clear about which units in the plaza we're talking about. So, Colin, do you mind going to there's I have it on 64 in mine, but I have the full packet. No. Okay. It's the lease plan.
Hold on, just give him a second to get that.
It's the I don't know if you can see. Oh, honey. Okay.
I think it's the last page.
Nope.
Yep.
Can't
There we
see that.
go. We got some blur. It's yeah, it's the visual of the Edge District.
One moment, sorry, because I'm sharing it as this combined PDF, I've got to,
I didn't prep you. I'm sorry.
I'm going to stop sharing for just a second so I can pull it up and not share anything I shouldn't.
Essentially, the long and short is I just want to make sure that we're talking about the right units.
It might be 257, page 257 of 381. Colin, I don't know if that helps you.
Bingo.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay, so on the right-hand side, as Sam described, the first building at the very top right is where Tavern is.
Correct?
Yes.
And then the next building down has a number of units in it. I think it's like 6 or 7. And so we're looking at the second to last one, right? That's D.
Actually, maybe the last two. I think it was meant to be an end cap. But I'm not sure how it's shown on the plan. I think it is, the numbering may be wrong, but it's meant to be the end caps are where we've left all the restaurants.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually surprised because that unit looks so small, so I couldn't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, I think that plan shows it subdivided with a smaller restaurant. But I think the actual license application shows it as the bigger one.
Okay. We should probably just clarify that because I think the way that it's written on the motion is that it's for D13, and I'm not sure if that is the right delineation, so I just want to make sure that we check that. And then you said that that one's probably the Italian concept that we will not. Okay. And then the next unit is the next large building, that sort of little cutout at the very
Correct.
end.
Correct.
Perfect, and that's E23. And then Taka is in the next building, the first unit, which is I think the longest.
It's the first unit and a half. It's actually shown as one unit, but there's maybe a dashed line shown there, which is a structural line, but it's that L-shaped piece facing the, correct.
Perfect. Yep. And then the other side of that same building, which is F11, is the one that you were describing as potentially golf, ping pong, some sort of entertainment concept.
Correct. Correct.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean that's really what I wanted to make sure is that we were on the same page about which units we were talking about. And so maybe as we're going through the last questions, I don't know, Colin or Sean, if you just want to double check the language that we're assigning the correct license for D13, D15, whatever that unit is right there.
To simplify, the motion can be just to approve the licenses as presented, and we'll work with Attorney Nakosha to make sure the application is in order.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And
we'll
to-
double check the square footage for you and the unit designations.
I will work with Attorney Nakosha this week, and then when we go to sign, when I have you sign the forms in the coming week, I'll make sure that everything matches the
Yeah,
applications.
before we ship it down to the ABCC, we'll.
Correct.
Okay. And
That's all I needed.
I-
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. I saw that select person Coughlin signed off and tried to sign back on. Adele, is it, do you have any questions? And you test it to see if your audio works?
she's still on mute.
At least right now, Adele, you're muted. It's not the microphone. So if you go into your Zoom window, see if you can unmute yourself.
No, I'm trying that.
We
There
got
you
you.
go.
Oh, there
We
you
got
go.
you.
All right. Select Person Coughlin, you have any questions for Mr. Park or Attorney
No.
Anacosia? All right, thank you. And I have no further questions either. I think we've covered pretty much everything. So thank you, gentlemen, for that presentation.
Chairman Schneider, if I could just
Yes.
ask one question myself.
Yes,
Of Eric, on the idea of the 12 months, just from as I was thinking through like how lenders are going to view this, if it's possible to word that review period as the board will have the right to rescind as opposed to, us requiring another approval, would give us the ability to, probably be more palatable to our lenders and investors. And I mean that because either way, I would, if you want to rescind it after that time frame, it's an action and it's not anything that we could contest. On the other hand, as opposed to putting another approval in process, which triggers the same conversation that we're having now about showing evidence of financeability, it would be better for it to be your right to rescind as opposed to our obligation to renew. Either way, we're renewing the license, but as opposed to it automatically sunsetting. I don't know if it may be just a
I think that's
nuanced.
what we were thinking, Sam, actually,
Oh,
is
Yes.
along those lines. So
Yes.
Got it.
No extra approval. I'm not advocating, Mr.
Great.
Chair, I'm not advocating for any additional approval. It would just be if after 12 months there's been no activity, we would have the right. I'm not saying that we would do it. It would just give us
Thank
that
you.
option. I would hope that we would discuss that, but that was what I was advocating for.
yeah,
Perfect.
that would just be a right to a public hearing to consider rescinding.
exactly. Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
If there are no further questions, Colin, we can close the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to,
With
I
that-
guess we need that with a roll call vote?
Let me make the motion, Mr. Chair, if you would.
Yes, sir.
I move that the select board close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Select Person Coughlin,
In favor?
Select Person Cohane,
In favor.
Select Person Eldridge,
In favor.
Select Person Gilfus,
In favor.
and I am also in favor. So now the public meeting is closed. Okay, unless we have any other questions, we can move to a motion.
Yeah, so as far as language on that, so I'll make the motion, but we said that we wanted to have if in the event that all the licenses have not been put in use, that we would hold a public hearing to consider a rescinding of the licenses. Is that what we're calling? Is that amenable?
Well, to be totally honest with you, and Attorney Nicosia weigh in if I'm off base, I think that the board saying it in the meeting has identified its intent. When we submit the LLA form to the ABCC, we're just submitting your approval. There's really not a place
The
for us to
motion
add
or
the
anything.
stipulation. So I think that your vote really should just be to approve the licenses as is, and staff know that you may choose after 12 months to execute your already existing right to call the applicant in before you. Attorney Nicosia, let me know if I'm off base there.
I agree 100%. You have the discretion as the local licensing authority to hold that type of public hearing regardless of the discussions this evening.
Mhm.
But it's going to be noted in the meeting minutes that
Exactly.
the board is going to consider that. So I would ask that it not be some condition attached to the approval and that it just be a blanket approval.
Fine, thank you.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
So would you
Mr.
like
Eldridge.
me to entertain, make a motion, Mr. Schneider?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, I move that the select board approve the 4 applications for on-premises all alcohol licenses and common victualler licenses to TCI-LHE LLC located at 440 Middlesex Road as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Select person Coughlin,
In favor.
select person Cohen,
In favor.
select person Eldridge,
In favor.
select person Gilfus,
In favor?
and I am also in favor, so that passes 5-0-0. Mr. Park and Attorney Konikosha, thank you very much. That was very informative.
And we'll
No,
see
thank
pretty
you.
soon.
And I'm happy to give everyone a site walk as we get closer to a warmer
Yes.
day where there isn't 2 feet of snow on the ground.
Thank you very
Yes.
much for that. Yeah, we'll take you up
Very
on
good.
that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Have a good night,
Sam, I'll
guys.
be in touch.
Okay, Mr. Loisel, a town manager's report.
If you would like, Mr. Chair, if the board would entertain, we do have the representatives for items 6 or 8A.
Oh,
I'm willing
all
to
right.
defer mine to the end.
That is fine. We can
Let me
do that.
just promote them real quick. I'm promoting Melissa Robbins, who's the attorney for the petitioner, and Dennis Page. While they're being promoted, I'll just give the board a brief primer. I've included in your packet a letter from our economic development director and town planner, Ben McClure, kind of outlining the friendly 40B. This is the first time that this makeup of the board has seen one. And so we wanted you to have an understanding of how it would work. And then also included in your packet is the conceptual plan that the petitioner submitted last week. The board has seen that. And then we've talked separately, but I also wanted to share, including your packet, which I'm sure they'll cover tonight. They did provide a financial analysis showing the potential new growth from this type of a project. So with that, I will let Attorney Robbins, who can far better explain this process, now weigh in and explain what they're looking for and how the process will go from here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Let me jump in line, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board, for listening to me this evening. As Mr. Chair and Colin has pointed out, I'm here tonight for a discussion regarding a proposed development at 352 Middlesex Road. That first plan that you have there is a nice looking conceptual plan. The development proposal we built adjacent to Mr. Page's and Mr. Trahan's current existing building, which is basically that gray building along Middlesex Road to the bottom of that plan set. I know that the town is over their 10% threshold, but this would give the town an additional buffer. We're proposing this as a 55 and over project, so it would create 55 and over housing. And as Colin has pointed out, I did also submit some tax information for some of the fiscal impacts this project could have to the town of Tyngsborough. So the proposal, and Colin, I don't know which of the best sheets for this, but you can just flip through while I'm talking, it's fine. So the proposal would be subject to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B. I do have it listed as a friendly 40B. For those of you that have gone through the process before, oftentimes 40Bs, when you go through the process with the select board, can be done through a local initiative project through EOHLC. And that means oftentimes that an applicant and the developer sign the same application and it goes to EOHLC. I sometimes feel as though those projects can take a little bit longer, especially not going through a mass housing or an MHP process. And what I would suggest to the board is we can do this as a friendly process if the board's inclined to support it, but we can go through the standard project through mass housing. And then when the board would get their standard comment letter to opine on the impacts of the project, they could then opine to support it. You get the same project eligibility letter, whether you go to EOHLC or you go to a project through mass housing. So if we get a little longer in the process, and this is something the board wants to support, we can talk about that a little bit more. But the board may be inclined just to allow the developer to go to mass housing instead of going to EOHLC as a joint venture. Just looking at the project a little bit more, and Colin, if you could just scroll down just a little bit. The proposal would be to build a multi-use project. So the building in the front would actually tie into Dennis and Dave's existing structure. They would be exactly the same height. This would have commercial space on the first floor. Right now, we're proposing approximately 5,000 square feet. If you look at the tan color above, you can see these are about 1,000 square feet apiece. And then above that would be 12 affordable single bedroom units. Again, these are all proposed to be 55 and over. And there'd be an elevator. I think you can see it with the X right in the center. So these would be accessible units through an elevator to the second floor. To the rear of the site, it actually grades down just a little bit for those of you that are familiar with the site at all. We're proposing 28, again, 55 and over townhouse style units. They'd be in 3 separate structures. So we have 2 9 townhouse style structures in the back. We're showing 1 10 structure. These units would basically be identical. They're all 1,450 square feet. They all have a master on the first floor. They have a second bedroom on the second floor. So they would be obviously accessible to those that would like a single floor living or have a guest room, or they could use the second bedroom as an office or whatever they would like. Because this is a rental project, it's proposed as a rental project, not only would they get the benefit of the commercial use out front, you'd get to count all 40 units on your inventory because it's a rental. You may be asking me the question, Counselor, that this is a 55 and over project, so how would it count? You can count 55 and over projects as long as you don't exclude school-age children. You just have to have 55 and over residents living there. So that's what we would propose. So these would be completely countable on the town of Tyngsborough's inventory. And I won't labor the tax basis, the improvement that this would give to the town tax basis, but I did submit this single sheet just so you could see our rough math. Our existing commercial structure, including the new garage out there, you can see the breakdown on the taxes. That's about $26,458 that goes to the town of Tyngsborough. If we were to build the complete second project, which is the second line items here showing 28 townhouse rental units, mixed-use building, the additional tax revenue there you can see is about $146,116. So really just a huge increase in a tax basis and an otherwise a site that could be used just commercially. So I think this is a great improvement to the town. I think if the board is inclined to support something like this, what we would probably do after this meeting tonight is go talk to the planning board and the zoning board as a preliminary discussion item before we made any applications, and then come back to the select board for further discussion to see if they wanted to support an application and talk about process. I think that's all of the general information, so I can stop talking for a bit now and give the board some time to ask any questions of me that you might have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I just add something from the town side briefly?
Yes,
So Ben McClure, town planner, and I have met with Dave and Dennis. They're well-known developers in town. They did the affordable component of the Toll Brothers project on the corner of Coburn and Sherburne there. A couple things that I want to note. The benefit of adding 40 units to our SHI, this board has talked, and I know the planning board has as well. One of the unintended consequences of the ADU changes in Massachusetts is that anytime an ADU is built in Tyngsborough, it counts again on our inventory, but it does not count as an affordable. So as more ADUs are being built, we are kind of artificially lowering our SHI. We are still well above the 10%, so I'm not saying that a few ADUs is going to put us at risk of being below 10%, but certainly being able to add 40 units to our SHI will protect us for quite some time. The only other piece I'll note is that from an infrastructure perspective, this development's being proposed off of a state road, so the impacts on local infrastructure would be minimum. And that site had been marketed for commercial development for quite a few years. Dennis and Dave and I spoke about this when we met. There really wasn't much interest. And so if we were going to put a small housing project like this somewhere, certainly I think Ben and I feel like all things considered, this would be a location that would make sense. And I know Attorney Robbins has said from the beginning that they would go before the planning board and the zoning board to get some input, but I just wanted to level set with the board on those pieces as well.
very good, thank you. I'll open it up to the board for questions. Let's start with Select Person Coughlin. Any questions?
Yeah, so it sounds, so Tyngsborough is over the 10% stock in affordable housing now, right? So, and it sounds like this has been, or so, you know, thoughts have been in the works. So what is the downside here? Is this, what would this do for traffic and that? Like, what is the downside for Tyngsborough?
Well, I can, Mr. Chair, to speak generally about that. I mean, for
Yes.
traffic on a roadway like this, especially a 55 and over development where these are 1 and 2 bedrooms, I would state that this would probably have no impact whatsoever to the traffic patterns. We'll have to look at the circulation as part of the comprehensive permit process. So it would follow, Ms. Coughlin, just like a standard 40B project. So when we apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we would submit with a traffic report and would have to prove that would have no implication to the traffic out there that would reduce that project, you know, the intersection or any of the traffic improvements to an app service. So that would all be looked at. You know, some towns, when they're over 10%, don't want to do any housing. So when you ask what the downside is for Tyngsborough, there really isn't a downside to creating housing. I think that Tyngsborough has been looking at some additional 55 and over housing. This is a nice place for housing. What will happen is in 2030, they'll do the census again. And as Colin has pointed out, what will happen is those ADUs and some other units that weren't created as part of affordable housing or inclusionary zoning will offset some of your affordable housing. It sounds like Tyngsborough might still have a little bit of a buffer, but this will give you an even higher buffer. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
And Mr. Chair, that actually, I should have said this when we began. The board's involvement is, this isn't the only shot the town will have at mitigating some of those concerns.
Right.
To Ms. Coughlin's point, if this advances, the Zoning Board of Appeals acts as a special permit granting authority. So that's where they'll talk about the site layout, traffic studies, all of the impacts that would traditionally be discussed by the planning board. We're certainly not going to ask the select board to approve a project and then construction will start right away. I should have noted that at the beginning.
Thank you. All right, Select Person Cohen.
Well, thank you for presenting this. As you said, this was a friendly 40B. I guess one of the advantages of this is if we end up having enough affordable units, we won't have some unfriendly 40Bs come in front of us sometime in the future. You know, as it relates for traffic, I like this location in the sense of it's not in the middle of a residential area. It's more of a commercial area. And I will say, I remember when we, when the enclave was approved, I remember everybody talking about the traffic. A lot of people may not know this, but it seems like, people that do live there and are actually there right now, say it's kind of a ghost town. Everybody's kind of gone to Florida. So, people 55 and older, a lot of people like to escape during the winter time. And I go by the enclave, that's the way I get home all the time. And I never see cars coming in and out of there. And so there's never a line or anything. There really isn't that much. Definitely this is one of our busiest roads. As we just, approved 4 liquor license, entertainment licenses. We're continuing to add on to Middlesex, that is Upper Middlesex. But this is our commercial corridor. So we expect lots of traffic there. One of the benefits that I do see when it comes to housing, I have talked to a lot of residents that, when the enclave came up, they said, well, I could never afford that, but I am looking for different types of options to maybe downsize, my 4-bedroom home that we all own with no kids. And some people are looking for, a cheaper way of staying in town. So I think this would help residents that do want to stay in town. They don't want to keep their large residence, but they want something that's more affordable. So I think this would help out with that. I don't really foresee too many downsides. As we said, we're just the start of the process. The zoning board will go through in intricate detail and determine a lot of the specifics of the units. And I have an open mind, as always. I will listen, but I can't foresee a downside at this time, but I have been surprised in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Select Person Cohen. Select Person Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you for bringing this to us. You know, I echo many of the things that Mr. Cohen just said. I am open to housing. I think that there's a need across the Commonwealth, and Tyngsborough is no different. I I echo the, you know, I appreciate the size of these units because I think it is, you know, a good option for people who, you know, don't want the 2,600 square feet, which is not a downsize. I think from a traffic standpoint, we're talking about 40 units. So I don't have a big concern with the volume. And then I think, as was mentioned, the location of this is good. I guess the only question I would have maybe for Colin is, do we have sewer capacity in this area? And, you know, some of the other challenges that we've talked about, I assume the developer obviously is their understanding of that. I'm trying to understand for myself.
Yes, as a part of this, they would have to go before the sewer commission. But where this project is located is conveniently on the one connection we have that still has capacity. This is the line that goes under the bridge over to Drake where we do have capacity. So sewer is certainly not an issue. There's water on Middlesex Road. So from a utility perspective, this site is certainly covered and has adequate connection. Again, they will have to go before the sewer commission when the time is right, but it exists there.
Thank you. Yeah, and the other thing is, some folks are concerned about, some folks will be concerned about the nature of the over 55 and having restrictions in there to not, this will allow school age children. You know, if I look at our enrollment in the schools, our enrollment is down. So we have capacity in these. Again, we're only talking about 40 units. So we're not talking about causing an explosion in the schools and other services. I think that this is a small enough project. I think that it has the mixed use pieces that we want to have more of. It has the over 55 components. It has a slightly higher density to address some of the other issues in town. So I would certainly, you know, like to see us go a little bit further. I know our ZBA, the folks are fantastic, and they will go and look at this. So I think it should go through that process. I don't see any downsides at this point, but certainly open to listening and see what potential challenges there might be. But at this point in time, I don't see any major concerns that I have.
Thank you. Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the disclosure. I am making this call from a unit in Merrimack Commons that was developed by the applicants. And so I certainly can vouch for the quality of their work. And I'm very satisfied and have been here for 5 years. So I will say that up front. I do have a couple of questions that I don't know who they're for, so we'll see. If you could just remind me, what's the current zoning for that area? Is it intended to be commercial right now?
Yes.
And so the idea behind this request is to get, how do they phrase it? Like, loosen those requirements to be able to do mixed use. That's the idea, right?
A 40B process would allow you to do a mixed use project out there as long as you comply with the rest of the 40B regulations, which would be the affordability and the deed restrictions in perpetuity.
Thank you. And so the building out front, I don't know why this meeting I'm asking to see all of the site plans, but Colin, do you mind going to the overhead that you had showed initially? Yeah, actually this one works. That's perfect. So the building that's on the left in the front is there now.
Yes.
The building that's right behind that is under construction right now.
Correct.
And so the proposal is for those 4 other buildings. So mixed use in the front, and then all of the residential in the back, the rental units. And I think it's, if I'm looking on the layout, it looks like it's 28 units. Is that correct?
Correct, 28 units in the rear, and then above the commercial use, it'd also be an additional 12 units that would be single bedroom units.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And do we have a sense of what that mixed use building might be used for on the first floor, or is that sort of as it comes to the planning board?
Yeah, I mean, the uses would still, just because you go through 40B doesn't mean that you can circumvent some zoning. So the underlying commercial uses would still have to comply with the underlying zoning regulations. So you'd see some of your standard commercial uses out there. These units, I think that they're just a little over 1,000 square feet, but they've been pretty successful. In Dennis and Dave's building next door has units that are approximately the size or a little smaller, and they're doing pretty well. So we think these would be great here. As you can look at like the design and the layout, the commercial matches the existing building to the left-hand side. Sorry, there's no arrow, so sorry about my no north, south, east, west here. So we think this would be a nice match in design. The building height is designed so it matches the height of the building, even though there's residential units overhead. So we think these would be very successful here for a commercial rent out in compliance with the planning board regs.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking aesthetically and conceptually, I think this is a really smart idea. I think that this is in line with our housing production plan. I also serve on the Affordable Housing Committee, and this feels in line with what we were seeking in terms of more rental units being developed. And I think it was Mr. Cohen that said, having an opportunity for people to age in place is definitely a goal. So I presume, Colin, when this goes to the planning board and the ZBA, they're the ones that really uphold the housing production plan, right?
Through this process, really, it's the zoning board of appeals that has the formal authority over 40B. The planning board would be a courtesy to get their feedback. The housing production plan has a variety of elements. It's really a goal setting document that requires collaboration between this board, the Affordable Housing Trust, the planning board, and the zoning board. But certainly we should all be rowing, and I think we typically are rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, I think as long as we're, following those ideals, you're totally right, Colin, and in terms of sort of using them as guiding principles. And this does seem like that's in line. So I think this is great. Thanks for coming before us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just have one question. As define, the affordable portion, is there any sense of what a range of rents would be in some of those units? Because, I really like that Mr. Cohen pointed out, there are a number of people in this town that would like to downsize, one for just because they don't need the room, but also just for affordability purposes. They might be paying, tons of real estate taxes on a big house. What might a unit like that, and I don't want to pen you in because I know this is, you can't get an exact number, but just a range.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, an affordable one-bedroom unit, Tyngsborough, I believe, is in the low statistical area for area median income. So you're looking at a one-bedroom unit, probably about $1,700 a month in the one-bedroom units, and probably a little higher than that, probably $2,000 in the two-bedroom units. And Ms. Gilfus could probably advise on this more than I can. The numbers are untouchable for rentals anywhere. But because of the nature of the units, quite honestly, the market rate units, even over, the one-bedroom units the market rates would probably be about $1,900 as well. So even if you don't qualify for an affordable unit, you could probably afford a market rate unit because there's not going to be much difference there in the one-bedroom units. And I would think that the market rate two-bedroom units would probably go for about $3,000 in today's market. Which would be great. I mean, from the market rate and the affordability standpoint, those prices would be great. There's nothing like it in the community right now. So we would like to move forward with this. And I'm sorry, I think I maybe jumped the gun a little bit in process here too, Mr. Chair. I mean, in order to go through with the process, even if this is a town-supported project, regardless if you go forward with a LIP which is a local initiative project, or you go a straight 40B through mass housing, you still file for a comprehensive permit application, even if you're over 10%. You still go through the process through the state and you still get issued a project eligibility letter. And then that project eligibility letter gives us the authority to apply to your zoning board of appeals for the comprehensive permit. The only difference when you get into the comprehensive permit process is that the zoning board of appeals, since you're over 10%, has more authority to deny waivers and to deny a project because you've met your housing production goals. And that's why oftentimes when a town is over 10%, you see developers who have a good project that we think would be town supported come to the selectmen and say, let's do a local initiative project. Let's do this together as a team, and we'll go to the state as a team. But once you get into the zoning board process, it's usually standard process. The developer goes through that process on their own. And the zoning board can choose whether it's a local initiative project or a standard 40B to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. So that process really doesn't change at all. So that's why I was saying at the top of the call, if we get some general support here, which it sounds like we are, we would go to the zoning board and the planning board and just get some of their initial comments as well. And then would loop back to the select board just to see how we would proceed. And at that point, we could decide, yeah, we're going to go forward. We're going to go to mass housing. We're super happy with the feedback we got, and then go from there. So sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to cut off any of your questions. I just feel like maybe I jumped the gun a little bit on the process there. I should have hit that at the top of my presentation.
That's fine. Thank you. No need to apologize. That's
Yeah.
great. That was a good explanation. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Colin, we don't need to vote on anything as a board.
No, I think that this was to feel the board out, see what your initial concerns
Yep.
might be. So I can work with Attorney Robbins moving forward on the next steps and provide regular updates. I imagine the state process will take some time. And they'll solicit feedback from the planning board. So I'll work with Attorney Robbins to coordinate that, and I will report back when there's an update to share.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
No, thank you very much. And we appreciate your time tonight. And thanks for hearing us via Zoom tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Colin, do we just want to go through the rest of the new business while we started?
Yes, if you'd like, Mr. Chair, I believe the speaker on item 8C
Yes.
is on the call. So if there's no concerns from the board, we can move to that one.
Why don't we do that?
All right. Let me just promote them. All right, so I have pulled up the letter that was submitted to the board for consideration, and I believe that Ms. Cafidi is on the call to explain the request to the board.
Thank you. Carolyn, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You want to give us a bit of a review of this letter of support
You want
for the
my
public
video on?
schools?
There we go. Yeah,
There you go.
hi. Thank
Hello.
you. Carolyn Scafidi, 13 Lynn Avenue. Thanks for placing me on the agenda. And tonight I'm representing the Mass Teachers Association in my capacity as the Senate District Coordinator for First Middlesex, which includes, as we know, Tyngsborough, Lowell, Drake, Dunstable, and Pepperell. And you did receive the letter, correct? Everyone read it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So as you read in the sign-on letter, there's a need for increased funding in the FY27 state budget for education. And although there's been funding from a variety of sources, the funding hasn't kept pace with the growing needs for the program, services, and staffing. And as a result, the cuts to educational programs and staffing has been devastating. And what you're asking the governor by signing on to the letter is to increase aid to education and also use available surplus funds from the Fair Share Amendment to address the fiscal crisis facing our public school districts. Now, our local communities can't continue to go it alone, and the state needs to work on solutions to solve this crisis. And as you read in the letter, suggestions were made to provide relief to all school districts. So I'm humbly asking you to sign on to the letter. It's been signed on by the superintendent of Tyngsborough, the assistant superintendent, the entire school committee, and the president of the Tyngsborough Tyngsborough Educators Association, TEA. Yeah. And knowing that, federal funding's been cut, and it's very difficult for all the local communities to continue to get revenue because of the Prop 2.5 is at that, it's not going anywhere. And if they can raise it, that would help the situation. But right now, that's not the situation. So this is just asking everyone to sign on so that it will be delivered to the governor. Back in November, the first round, 1,000 signatures were delivered to the governor. And our goal this time is in April to deliver 2,000 signatures on this letter to the governor. And the more that they hear from the community, it might make a difference because it does matter.
Very good, thank you.
Any questions?
Yes, I open up to the board for questions. Select person Coughlin, you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you, Carolyn. So my question is, are we being asked to sign this personally or collectively as a board? And so I guess, I'm not sure that, Carolyn, this is for you to answer, or is this for my colleagues? That's, I guess, my first thing. And, I'm curious to find out if you know about if the governor did anything in November when that first 1,000 signatures went to her. I'm not sure or suspect that probably nothing was done. My concern here, and my concern obviously as a mother and a grandmother is always about the children and making sure that education is like top notch, right? But I struggle with, in this state, overspending, over regulations, over taxing. And I don't know that those issues are being addressed, and looking to get more money and less accountability. I struggle with that, right? So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. And we kind of, voted for that, right? And the administration is going to be running again, right? Mara Healer, she wants to be reelected. And the Mass Teachers Association had been instrumental in getting her elected, and the rank and file educators also. And so that is my concern. And I mean, I think if people want to personally put their name to something, they can. I just don't feel comfortable, and I don't want to be representing the entire board because I don't feel comfortable with this, because I'm not sure that it's going to go anywhere. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're just focusing on whether or not the letter wants to be signed either individually or as a whole.
That's my question.
All right, thank you. Select person Cohen.
Well, as part of Select person Coughlin's question, should we do this individually or as a board? We have the authority to do either. We have signed many of these in the past. Also, Select person Coughlin's like, what has been done, when we have done this in the past, and to be honest, sometimes not a whole lot, sometimes nothing, and sometimes the message does get through. You have the Teachers Associations, we have Mass Municipal Association. Last year, we we wrote letter after letter about road funding, and all of a sudden, the chapter 90 went up. So, and now that's happened. The goal of usually these letters is, what are the pain points in a community? And as the select board, we represent the residents of this community, and we have every authority to sign on letters that we feel that would help the community. We're about ready to hear an awful lot from the school about, all the issues that they have. They're extensive. I don't want to go through them. Carolyn, I'm sure, knows a lot more than I do about that. A lot of unfunded mandates all over the place.
Mhm.
We have 4 high schools, and when it comes to, busing kids around, we're liable for that. We're 4 high schools. So there's a lot going on right now. And as it relates to education, I also feel that, we need to do as much as we can for education. There's a lot of challenges in the education department and in municipal government. And, we should be at the forefront of letting our legislatures know where our pain points are, and hopefully they can help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so the way I read this is, and if I look at, the pages, this specific letter is being asked to be signed by individuals. So, if you look at, you put your name, the city and the town, and then your title. I think that if I look at what Select Person Coughlin was talking about, I think that there's a lot of things that we need to deal with the state in funding. And I think that I have concerns with the board signing on to this particular letter, because I think it is very specific to items. And I don't know that they're items that are most important to Tyngsborough. I think that there are things relative to, so there's the statewide funding problem where the formulas just don't work. And that's for infrastructure, that's for schools, that's for a whole variety of things. And we just wrote a letter to the state indicating that the state is putting us in a very difficult position because they're having a lot of these unfunded mandates. And I think that was important for us because it did cover all of the things relating to Tyngsborough. I think the challenge I have with this particular letter is that it's very focused in from the Mass teachers' view of things. And I think that part of the problem that I've heard and in talking with the folks in Tyngsborough and speaking with the superintendent, and I think this will come out again next week when they're in, is that the funding from the state is not enough. But where a lot of the funding that people are talking about, it's addressing issues that are more for the cities, more of the rural things, and less about what Tyngsborough gets. And because we kind of get stuck on both sides of the formulas. We're not in the city, so we don't get those benefits. We're not in some of these rural areas where they are struggling because they're really getting hammered. It's kind of like Tyngsborough is the middle class when it comes to the state, and that we get, the rich people, they're all set. The folks that don't have as much are getting more benefits, and we're stuck in the middle. So I would rather see us as a board work with the school committee and have a letter that addresses what is important to Tyngsborough, because I don't know if it's all of these items under the specifically. So I don't know that the board signing on to this letter is what I would advocate. I absolutely think that we as individuals could sign on to this letter because that's what the letter is set for. Now, and would be very specific in that, those of us who would be signing individually would be doing as individuals and not speaking for the town or the board. So that's my take on it. I think that I would rather have something that was focused in on how the state needs to help Tyngsborough as a whole, and then specifically around some of the school funding things, I would much rather do that as a board rather than this particular letter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad that I'm going at number 4 in the order because I think that Select Person Coughlin initially raised questions and concerns that I had. I think that Select Person Cohane framed that really well, and Select Person Eldridge said exactly what I was thinking in terms of I don't know that this addresses specifically what Tyngsborough is seeking. Of the bulleted items that are the specific calls to action, when I look at this list, the two that stood out as things that we've talked about for our budget issues, it was the transportation costs and
Mhm.
the financial impact of charter schools. And those two we talk about over and over. So I agree, those are items that we should be advocating to be addressed. And I think we are doing that to some degree through our state reps. And that's why when we have tri-board, we make sure that, we're having these conversations about funding concerns. And I hope that that's being brought back to the legislature. But I really like the idea that Eric raised of potentially working with the school committee or the superintendent or, whatever that looks like for us to create a joint statement. And similarly, send it to the governor, send it to the administration, but have it be much more targeted to Tyngsborough's needs. Because I think that the Mass Teachers Association, their entire charge is to do this work, and so it is framed in a way that is representing the most teachers across the Commonwealth, and I think that our needs are just a little bit different. Um so yeah, I would say I echo that. I do have a question logistically about if we decide to sign it individually. Because the form is very clear that you would select your town, your title, the organization or school district that you're representing. I am curious how this is similar or different to the conversation that we had about Select Person Schneider signing a letter that was meant to be his individual support, but because it had his title listed, that raised concerns about him speaking on behalf of the town. So, how would we do this in a way that is very clear that we are supportive and are, I think it is fair for us to be named with title, but how do we do that in a way that doesn't misconstrue how we're representing?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to weigh in?
Please do.
So great point, Select Person Gilfus. If you remember back when we had this conversation, town council's position, and I tend to agree with the assessment, is that so long as an individual member does not attempt to portray their views as representing the entire board, and I've admittedly not gone through filling out this form, but simply identifying yourself as a member of the select board doesn't purport to say that you're representing the entire board. If you had said on behalf of the select board or my colleagues on the select board, that would. So it's up, it's on what you take away from it as a board member, but identifying yourself as a member of the board does not purport to act on behalf of the entire board.
Okay, that's really
Thank
helpful,
you.
Colin, because at least, unfortunately, the letter, if you go to the next page of it, Colin, the form is pretty prescriptive. So it says, like
Yes.
put in your first name and last name, your email address, your town, and then it's a checkbox of what your title is. So there really is no ambiguity, I think, if that is the way that it's framed. It really is an individual, but including your title. So that's helpful.
Yep.
And the last thing I'll say before turning it back to you, Mr. Chair, is just that we did get a couple of comments from residents about this, and they did, the ones that I saw at least were discouraging us from signing on. And there were a number of other reasons why that was raised, not just the ones that we've brought up. I don't believe that those letters were included in our correspondence just based on our new correspondence policy. But that is probably something that, Carolyn, if you wanted to dig into that more, if you wanted if there's an expectation that you're going back to MTA and giving them a readout of how this conversation went, potentially working with Colin or Eric as the clerk to make sure that we're capturing what residents' feedback was, that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, this has all been very helpful. I think it's great if you all want to get together and write something about what the Tyngsborough needs are. I totally understand. I mean, you know, this is a position that I have, and this is what one of my goals is to do. Do I always agree with everything that I'm asked to do? No, but I found this very, very helpful, and I totally respect it. And it's perfect. And I thank you all for your input, because a lot of times
Well
I'm on the
done.
same page.
Okay,
Yeah, I
well,
mean-
hold on, we're not
Oh,
done
sorry,
yet.
go ahead.
No, please, let me finish up, because then I give you my
Yeah,
thoughts.
yeah, I think I'll respond to you, Carolyn, and then I'll hand off. I think that I know that in my role, I often write things on behalf of others and give it to them and say, you read this out loud, or you send this email exactly as I've written it. And that doesn't mean that it represents what that person is thinking necessarily. So I can imagine that MTA said, Carolyn, here's the letter that we all have drafted, and go ask people to sign it. So I think it's totally fair for you to go back to them and say, you know, here was the feedback. They're not going to sign this letter, but that doesn't mean that they don't support it or that they won't write another letter. So that's it for me.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, thank you. So my thoughts, you know, we're in a period right now, we're in a, you know, lack of a better term, a budget crisis with the schools, right? So anything that we can do to support even a portion of the school budget, whether it be transportation or you know, whatever, I think it's incumbent upon us to support that. We can disagree with Mr. Eldridge. I agree and disagree with him. So I agree that this is probably not hitting every one of our top items, but it's hitting some of our items. And I think it's more powerful if you submit 2,000 signatures than if we submit a single letter with 10 signatures that's specific to our town. This is just my opinion now, but I would rather sign on to a letter that would, you know, get given to the governor that has 2,000 plus signatures on it, because I think it screams louder than individual letters coming from a select board or a school committee or you know, a tri board or whatever it is. I think there's a strength in numbers there. And so, you know, I'm in support of signing this. I would sign it individually, you know, immediately. That is up to each member of the board to make that decision. But, you know, I guess one question to you, Carolyn, how did the school committee sign it? They all signed it as individuals, I presume, right?
Yes, they did. They all
Okay,
signed it
and
as
then it's-
individuals. Yeah,
And I think that says something to us, the fact that every school committee member plus the you know, the superintendent, you know, that the fact that they're all signing it is saying something that they feel this letter is important enough to you know, to support and to get in front of the governor. So
Yeah.
that's my comment. But thank you,
Mr.
Karen.
Chair?
We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
You know, thank you for those comments. Those are the two comments that I wanted to make also. I think it will be much more impactful for 2,000 signatures than 10. And somebody mentioned about going back to the school and getting their input. And I thought Carolyn had said, and she just confirmed it, they all signed this. And if
Yeah.
I look at some of the things at the top of this list, there's things that I've heard over and over again every tri-board meeting. Special education circuit breaker, hear that. Chapter 70, you know, I hear about that. Reimbursing regional, non-regional school district or student transportation, that's a huge issue for us. And then, you know, there's in the charter schools, you know,
Charter school.
I've heard all those things at every tri-board meeting we've been at. So I think this is representative. You know, maybe they like to prioritize a little bit better, but I think representing 2,000 signatures, it goes a lot better than our town of 12,000 sending in a letter by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, can I ask
Any
a
further
question?
comments?
Chair, Select Person Gilfus has their hand raised.
Good. Select
Thank
Person
you,
Gilford?
Colin. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really glad that you said what you just said, Mr. Chair, because when I felt very clear that we were representing Tyngsborough and the select board in our town, but what you've just said has helped me reframe that if we are advocating on behalf of other school districts and their needs, that certainly will carry more weight and lifting up the needs of other communities in our area, not just our own. So honestly, I think it could go either way. I can see us signing as long as we understand that what we're really advocating for is for the better experience of people that have very different economic needs than we do. Or I can see us doing it as individuals, understanding full well that these are not exactly the needs of Tyngsborough. So thank you for reframing it that way.
You're welcome. Thank you. Further questions, comments, anyone?
Select Person
Yeah.
Coughlin has their hand raised.
Yeah, I guess my concern is if one is signing their name, right, but not on behalf of Tyngsborough Select Board, but they write, member of the Tyngsborough Select Board, can it be misconstrued by the Mass Teachers Association to say, we look at all of these boards we have as part of our signature of over 2,000. So is it misleading then to have the select board title in that? Like, wouldn't it be best for like resident of Tyngsborough, Massachusetts? Just throwing that out there.
No, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
I've just been asked to go to municipal
it's-
leaders. I mean, that was my charge.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's going to happen to you personally for signing on to this. It's just that the more numbers, the more people that advocate for something to the state house, they pay more attention and in hopes that they'll do something more about it. It's saying all of us collectively, we care about this. We would like you to do something about this. It's just instead of no one speaking up and saying anything. And
Yep.
it's not just like, I appreciate what everyone's saying, Ron and Ron, about, it's like, it's not about what's specific to Tyngsborough. We're looking at it as the whole. We're a community. The whole Commonwealth is a community. We care about each other. We want to support each other. We can't be so like, this is what I need and this is what I'm just that's all I care about. Because there can be other things that can happen by supporting each other.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
So here's a logistical question for you, Colin, or for you, Carolyn. Seeing as we're meeting remotely, if any one of us want to sign on to this letter, how do we do that? Do you want to have a copy at Colin's office that we could stop by and sign, or how do we propose to do that?
Well, you can do it directly onto the online.
Okay.
If you each have the letter, you can just sign on to it or not sign on to it.
Okay.
I don't need anything. It goes directly to MTA. I don't have a paper. They want it online. It's easier for them to keep track of it. Yeah, so I appreciate whatever. I respect everybody's opinion. I really appreciate the discussion. It's always very educational and interesting and productive. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, Carolyn, we appreciate your time and the work you do on behalf of the MTA. So thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Colin.
Hi, Colin.
Where are we? 8. We've done 8. Do you want to go to 8B, or do we want to go to your report first?
I'd be happy to go to my report and break up the new business.
Perfect.
Excellent. So I will start with some breaking news. The Tyngsborough Public Schools are closed tomorrow. So you heard it here first, unless you're subscribed to their email alerts, in which case you heard it here second. But On that same note, the last few weeks have obviously been very active winter weeks with a few good snowstorms, but also lots of icing. Prior to the Town Manager Act, the Select Board was required to formally vote to authorize deficit spending in the snow and ice account. As all of you are likely aware from prior years, there's only one municipal funding source that you are legally permissible to overspend, and that's snow and ice. Every year we budget 250,000. Every year we overexpend it. The reason that we keep it at 250 is because it adds flexibility elsewhere in the budget, and we generally use free cash to close the funding gap. So as of January 21st, because I don't have the numbers from what was a blockbuster storm yesterday into today, we are $70,000 into a deficit. This is in line with where we were at this point last year, and again, with all the snow that fell yesterday and into today, I'm sure that that number has increased. So what you will see is at an October special town meeting, a request to use free cash to close that deficit. On that same note, I do want to just take a minute to share my appreciation for the hard work of our DPW crews. The Highway Division has been out almost nonstop since Saturday or Sunday morning, keeping roads clear and passable. And our Facilities Division has been out just as long, clearing municipal parking lots and ensuring that all of our facilities are ready to open tomorrow. Town offices, the library, and the Center for Active Living will operate regular schedules tomorrow, and our facilities crews have ensured that that will happen uninterrupted. Our DPW Superintendent Jake Zwicker was out with the DPW folks throughout the storm. We were in touch late into the night and early in the morning, and fortunately there were very little issues. I spoke to our public safety folks again this morning. There were no serious accidents. I think Chief Russell joked that not even a twig had fallen. No substantial power outages. So aside from all of the folks that had to shovel, it was a relatively easy storm in terms of a public safety perspective. A note that nomination papers are now available for the May 2026 annual town election. Residents can obtain those nomination forms in the office of the town clerk through March 26th. The deadline to turn in completed nomination papers is March 31st. And if you visit tyngsboroughmay.gov, there's a scroller on the homepage that has all the information, the important deadlines, how you vote, where to register to vote, and you can also check your voter registration status. Last week, we announced the fiscal year 27 budget office hours. Our first one will be on Tuesday, April 7th, followed by Wednesday, April 15th, and Wednesday, April 22nd. We'll host one in the evening at Town Hall, in the afternoon at the Center for Active Living, and then one in the evening via Zoom. This follows the same format that we used in the last 2 years. We implemented these 2 years ago with the goal of creating an informal setting for residents to get familiar with the budget process, as well as the proposed budget. We found them to be traditionally very well attended. I think those that attend the budget office hours, and I believe that every one of you has attended it, has an opportunity to very informally ask questions that they may otherwise not feel comfortable asking at town meeting. And again, we joke about this all the time. We can spend 45 minutes debating a zoning amendment article, and then in 3 seconds, we approve the town's $50 million budget. So our goal here was really to help residents develop a sense of ownership, and I think that that has happened. I'm happy to share that the town was once again awarded a cybersecurity training grant. So for all of our staff and members of the board that have a Tyngsborough May email, this means that you've been enrolled in another year of your cybersecurity training. The training is not just important to ensure that we don't have a significant breach like many municipalities have over the last few years, but it also helps us maintain our very competitive cybersecurity insurance policy. As the cybersecurity world becomes more vulnerable, insurance policies are either becoming harder to get or more expensive. And by participating in the extensive cybersecurity work that we do, we've been year over year able to renew our policy and also renew it at very decent rates. So I'm appreciative to all of the staff that take time out of their day to do it. I'm appreciative to the board members that participate as well. And certainly our IT department is incredibly pleased. On a staffing front, I would like to wish a congratulations to our newest police officers. Officer Aaron LeMay and Officer Brian Walker will graduate from the Massachusetts Police Training Committee's Police Academy on Thursday. They're graduating from the 36 recruit officer course and will promptly begin their field training here in Tyngsborough before being able to assume solo patrol responsibilities later this spring. Chief Woods was originally supposed to be here this evening to introduce them and do a pinning ceremony, but given the virtual nature of our meeting, he will be before you at your meeting on February 9th, and we'll have those officers with him as well. And then just a couple reminders and upcoming events. The Council on Aging will host a paint and sip with non-alcoholic beverages on Wednesday, January 28th at 6 p.m. at the Center for Active Living. A reminder that there's a primary for the special state election on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. This is for the election to replace or to fill the vacancy left by the passing of the late Senator Kennedy. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can vote by absentee mail now. And again, if you visit tyngsboroughma.gov or contact our town clerk's office, they can help you find all of your voting options. And then the Tyngsborough Health Department and the town clerk's office will host their second annual rabies vaccine clinic and dog licensing event on Saturday, February 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Ironwood Park in the clubhouse. Walk-ins are welcome, or you can register online by visiting tyngsboroughma.gov. Dogs must be on a leash and cats in a carrier, and the cost for a vaccine is $20.
This week,
Thank you.
we released a request for proposals for the Northeast Public Health Alliance, or NEFA, as it's more commonly called, for which Tyngsborough serves as the fiscal lead. The RFP seeks a consultant to help the Alliance with its strategic planning initiative to help better plan for the needs of all member communities. The work's funded directly through the grant. RFPs are available beginning today and are due Monday, February 23rd. 2026, and more information on the RFP, including the documents itself, can be found at tyngsboroughma.gov/bids.aspx.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for that. I will open it up to the board for questions. So we'll go in the same order. Select person Coughlin.
Yeah, no questions. Just want to comment on the great job that the plows are doing, and it was a monster of a storm, and I haven't really stepped out, but my street looks pretty good. So, and I've heard great things so far about other roads in the town. So, thank you.
All right. Select person Cohane.
Also, kudos to the DPW crews. As always, they did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you. Select person Eldridge.
Broken record. Yeah, a lot of hours. This was a long storm, so I'm sure the guys are really tired. So thanks to the DPW and our contractors. I know we had a lot of contractors. I know a lot of folks have been lamenting some of the challenges of early season storms that we had, those 1 to 2 inch ones, which it's not worth it to go out and plow and sand and do all those things. And people are like, oh, but this storm really showed that, hey, when we go out there and we have to go through and address real storms, our folks are just top notch. And I went out this morning first thing, and I was shocked at how clear the roads were that early. It was just amazing. So, and I'm so glad to hear that from a public safety standpoint that the residents were smart in their driving, and we didn't have people that were thinking that they have all-wheel drive and that they can just drive around wherever they are. So glad to hear that we got through whatever 18, 19 inches that we've got unscathed. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Select person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Props to DPW. And certainly there's been a lot of nice conversation on Facebook about how well the roads have been cleared in town. I saw people posting on a local meteorologist page bragging about how great Tyngsborough looked and how clear the roads were. So kudos to that. I am curious, do you have a sense, Colin, of why the schools decided to close tomorrow? I mean, I haven't left my house in 36 hours, so I don't actually know how it is out there. But if the roads are as clear as it sounds like they are, what else factors into that? Do you know?
Yeah, certainly it's not. So the roads are relatively clear. I think I've not looked away from this computer screen, but we were expecting a few more inches tonight, likely. But the other thing is that all of our efforts during the heat of the storm are keeping the roads passable. There's still substantial work left to do in terms of pushing back intersections, clearing corners that are tough to make turns, certainly factoring in students that have to, wait where there's a big snow mound right now. So it's not as simple as if the roads are all right. It's really about making sure that we have the time to do some of the detailed work that can't happen until we've kind of gotten out of the immediate storm mode.
That's very helpful information. A question that I had before you mentioned that, when you talked about the snow and ice account, how does that work in terms of budget? Do we budget anything in that account, or do we always run it as a deficit and then pay it back at the end of the season when we know how much we've actually spent?
We always budgeted at 250,000. That we've been doing that for probably 6 or 7 years. The reason you don't want to over budget is because once you budget the money, it's unavailable for any other purpose until typically, the special town meeting after you've closed your books. So if you over budget, let's say you budget 500,000, you only use 300, you've kind of left that $200,000 unavailable to touch. At the 250,000, generally we do go over it, and then we make up for it through free cash. It's the one line item in a municipal budget that doesn't automatically count as a deficit when DOR reviews your books, is the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, I can imagine that the Commonwealth has needed to make that delineation because every community is dealing with the same uncertainty of how weather works. So, okay, thank you. And then a question for Sean. When you talked about, did you say NEFA?
NEFA, yeah, the Northeast Public Health Alliance.
NEFA. Two questions. Could you clarify what it means to be the fiscal lead, and which other communities are in NEFA?
Yeah, it's Tyngsborough, Billerica, Chelmsford, and I believe Drake. Colin, correct me if I'm wrong on the last one. Tewksbury, yes. Tewksbury.
Not Drake.
Yep, thank you. So Tyngsborough basically serves as the procurement lead. So now that we're issuing an RFP, as we've done for the Board of Health and NEFA in the past, everything goes through our office. So from that standpoint, we take care of it. We issue the RFP. So it's not Chelmsford, it's not Tewksbury, it's not Billerica. It basically allows us to be the point for that organization in relations with the state, in relation to all things procurement and otherwise.
That's
It's
so nice.
basically ease of operations, so we know it all funnels through one place, and we don't have Tewksbury doing one thing working in a different direction than Chelmsford or Billerica or us.
The only other thing I noticed that it also comes with a financial benefit. So as the lead, we applied for the grant as the lead community. A portion, a very small portion, but a portion nonetheless of our health director's salary is subsidized through the grant. And then there are certain administrative charges and expenses that come back to Tyngsborough that don't go back to the other communities. So Sean's correct. We run the grant for all intents and purposes, but we also have that positive financial piece to it.
That's great. Did we just like request to be the fiscal lead and the other communities acquiesced, or like how did that happen? Do we get nominated?
This is our fourth
amount of
year
time?
in the NEFA grant, and I believe the historical passage of it is that our health director approached those other communities asking if they were interested, and we had the capacity at the time to be the lead, and so it's worked very well. Everybody in the group has the same vote, so NEFA is the name of the organization. They post their meetings, they meet and decide how to use the grant. So it's not like we get to control everything, it's just that we agreed to be the lead.
I just think that's nice. I think that this is yet another example of the way that our town really steps up for the region, and that we have really strong staff that thinks about community partnerships, and I think this is really lovely. So thanks for bringing this to us, Sean.
Sorry.
That's it.
Okay, and might as well go with the DPW, go 5 for 5, and kudos once again to the DPW for the great job that they did for this storm and for every storm. My other comment is on your budget office hours, Colin, and I'm glad you're doing this. I think we cannot emphasize enough to the townsfolk. This is not our budget. This is not, your budget, Colin. This is the town's budget. Everyone has an equal say in this budget. As Mr. Cohen always points out, we are just one vote. But everyone has a vested interest in understanding this budget, in voicing their concerns, asking their questions. So I'm glad that you're doing this. I think it's a very important thing that we put out there and make available to people. So thank you. I have no other questions. All right, we will move on. Item 8B, which is review, approve the draft sustainable purchasing policy.
Did you want to, we still have. fire
I'm
station
out of
building-
order. No, I am out of order. I am so out of order. You are right. I just got excited. Fire station building project update. Sorry.
Not a problem, Mr. Chair. So to date, the Fire Station Building Committee has spent much of its time focusing on public outreach and bringing information to the public square. We've hosted 5 different information sessions, including ones in the evening, morning, weekdays, weekends. They've been a mix of in-person and virtual. Our most recent one was over the weekend in the extreme cold. Chief Russell led that one at the Old Town Hall. We've had a steady attendance as well as great engagement with the folks who have attended. We still have 2 more planned. Our next one is at Town Hall on Wednesday, February 4th at 5 p.m. That's ahead of our regularly scheduled Fire Station Building Committee meeting. And then the final one in this phase of our outreach is on Wednesday, February 11th at 6:30. I say this phase of our outreach because what we've been focusing on so far is helping people understand what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, how we're going about doing it, how we landed on the parcel we landed on. In the next phase, we'll have much firmer design plans to look at and cost estimates, of course, what everybody wants to know. And so the same outreach efforts that we've undertaken in phase 1, if you will put on steroids for phase 2, because that's when we'll have the information that people really want. But for what we've been trying to get out, and certainly Select Person Coughlin can weigh in here as the chair of the committee, I do think that we've had positive engagement. People are getting their questions answered. And a lot of the questions that we get are repeat questions. So you'll see our frequently asked questions are really what people are trying to figure out. We've also launched a direct outreach campaign to bring these information sessions to local community groups. So starting tomorrow morning, the emails are scheduled. If you're a group that's registered with us through the community group program that this board adopted 2 years ago now, we're asking to come to your meeting. So we want to do the hard work of finding people and meeting them where they are. So we'll start doing that over the course of the next month. If you are a member of a community group that hasn't heard from us tomorrow morning, or that you think we wouldn't have heard of, please let me know. Let Select Person Coughlin know. One of the things we did as an exercise with our Fire Station Building Committee members is asked them to let us know groups that they're involved with. And so we're leveraging those connections. But certainly if any of you have groups that you think we should reach out to, the more the merrier. Last week, the committee met and approved the site layout as well as the proposed floor plan. Both of those design submissions are available on the Fire Station Building Committee's page at tyngsboroughma.gov, and they have been since prior to their meeting on Wednesday. Our work now is going to focus on some of the more technical details, including ironing out our mechanical systems, utility connections, and grading. So the project is moving along, I think, at the right pace, and certainly we're hitting all the boxes that this board made a priority when we embarked on this back in the fall.
Thank you. I'll open up to the board for questions. Select Person Coughlin.
Yeah, no, I don't have any questions. Just wanted just to reiterate the great work that's being done, the good pace, and also the outreach. Chief did a great job Saturday braving the cold, and so did a lot of the people who came out to brave the cold just to listen, and had some great questions. So I think it's really going pretty well.
Great, that's good news. Select Person Cohen.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody on the committee, and the residents who have been, engaged in the process. I do believe, even though it might be a little early, one of the residents actually that attended one of these information sessions, who, was talking a lot about the Winslow School, and she also made, a very valid point. She thought it would be a very good compromise if we named this new fire station the Winslow Fire Station. So I think I would really like to start that discussion at some future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Eldridge.
Yeah, just to echo that, I think we've talked about that before. I think everybody is looking at it for, you know, the bigger picture and, you know, long term, certainly preserving the historical components to that. We talked about some of the things, you know, relative to that whole parcel and the people. And so I think it is important that people have ideas and they share them. Um, I think that people have been raising some good questions. I think we have to make sure that we address as many of those questions as possible, um, so that residents can be informed. I think that the committee has been doing a great job of hitting a bunch of different touch points, but I still worry, are we getting to enough of the people? And you know, it's hard when it's wintertime. Um, the folks braved the elements recently, but you know, we're going to have to figure out how, leading up to town meeting, that we make sure that we get to everybody, because we don't want there to be any surprises, because there's going to be two pieces to this. There's the town meeting vote, and then there's the vote at the ballot, and we have to be successful at both of them. So I think it's going to be really important to make sure that we pull out all stops and make sure that we're communicating to people. You know, get the facts out there. It's not a matter of changing people's minds or anything like that. It's more just making sure that they have all the information that they need to make, you know, an educated vote. So I appreciate the efforts of the committee so far, and I know that there's been a lot that's been done, but we still have a lot to do. So thanks everybody for those efforts.
Thank you. And Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tremendous work being done. I mean, it's really amazing the amount of outreach that has been done. Like Select Person Eldridge, I am worried. I think I'm increasingly worried about perceptions around this, especially as we're dealing with the budget deficit that we're going to talk about later in the meeting. I don't know how we quantify the public sentiment around this. I wonder, Select Person Coughlin, is this something that you're talking about with the building committee? And do you have a sense of, you know, how do we figure out between now and May if people are supporting this or if they're resistant?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it is something that we all on the committee do think about and kind of could lose sleep over, you know, if we had to. But I think we're encouraged with the communication. We're also encouraged with Colin has his facts of, you know, how many views that, you know, that are getting clicked on for like when the chief did his thing and, you know, Colin. And I think we have other, you know, presentations sort of in the pipeline as well. Um, I know it's a struggle, right, to get how to get this information out there. But you know, people have to want to consume it too. So that's the other part of this. And so, you know, similar
Yeah.
to, you know, going to the ballot box, right? Like we struggle with that as well. And how many people will come to town meeting? So, you know, but I just really want to share, you know, right now that the staff in our fire station are doing the best they possibly can with the conditions, and come out, like, you know, not now because, you know, the snow, but like you need to come out and see, and you know what we have. I mean, it's for everybody in town. You know, we had a new school a few years ago and just opened up, right? We had those conversations, and that was for a subset of the population, but this is for everyone in town, really. So I think it's in everybody's best interest. But you know, the budget being what it is, you know, and everybody's concerned about that. So there is that consideration. I don't know if I answered your question, but it's just like I'm trying to be as helpful as possible, and just rally people for this need that we have in our community.
Yeah, I think that you answered my question as well as you could have with how much unknown there is. And ultimately that's sort of my sentiment, which is at some point we're going to need to figure out what the public sentiment is, and maybe we aren't there right now. I don't think that we do any sort of polling before any sort of elections. I don't know if that was something that was done before the middle school vote. This is sort of a similar, contentious topic that needed significant budget approvals. So, Colin, I see you nodding. Just if you could share maybe what happened then.
Yeah, let me just, I think Select Person Coughlin addressed this perfectly. I've said this to this board a bunch of times. I say it almost every meeting to the Fire Station Building Committee. It is whether or not this passes, I do truly believe is going to come down to whether or not the taxpayers think they can afford it. I think one of the things that we are certainly seeing is that we really haven't seen in any of our interactions, and I know if I go searching, I'll find one, but we haven't seen in any of our interactions or the folks that have come to these info sessions, anybody who's saying we don't need a new fire station. I know that if I go online, I'm sure I'll find a comment, but we're not really seeing that. And I've said that here, and I'll say it again, there will be people who will say, yes, we need a new fire station, but I still can't afford one. And so I don't truly know that there is a value to doing, certainly at this phase, we don't know the final dollar amount. So that's one challenge. The other thing is that when you do, anonymous polling, and we certainly didn't do this ahead of the middle school, you get the people who feel very passionately about the issue. So you'll have the people who, come hell or high water, are going to vote for a new fire station. And you'll have some people who are going to say, no, we don't need one. But the people you won't capture is the ones who are going to have to make a split-second decision. Can I afford my tax bill going up? And, I know that we'll look at the vote as being successful or unsuccessful, whether or not it passes. But I truly think that there is only so much we can do. I've shared with the committee, and we'll talk more at a future February meeting, how we can look at potentially reducing CPC to minimize the impact. Aside from things like that, it's really going to come down to what taxpayers can afford. And so I think what we do know is that the information is there for those who want it. We know people are consuming it. We are getting feedback via, email to the committee or in our information sessions. What will be really hard to gauge is how much more can taxpayers swing to make a fire station come true, even again, if they believe that they truly need a fire station.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is I think you make a good point there, Colin. There is a difference between, I guess I would remind the group that there's a difference between awareness and an actual desire. And so we may provide tons of information and they may be consuming it, but that doesn't mean that we're making any sort of compelling, persuasive argument. And Colin, to your point, even if we are persuasive and they do believe that there's the need, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's enough for them to commit, because there is this financial component that ultimately we really don't have a lot of control over. I mean, we can certainly do what we can to offset it and make that burden as minimal as possible, but at the end of the day, every person's wallet is their own. So it's tricky, but thank you for the work that you guys are doing in any case. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. And I will just reiterate what other people have said. And I've said this before in other meetings, we can never be too transparent, and we cannot over communicate this, right? So the more ways we communicate and the more transparent we are, that is really all we're called upon to do. The final decision, as Select Person Gilson said, is each person's individual decision about their pocketbooks, their decision about whether we need a fire station. But I applaud the fire station building committee. They're doing a great job. I know it's a difficult job. The weather is not cooperating and getting people out, but you're going where people are, and I think I think it's a terrific job. So we will continue to keep up the good work. Okay. Finally, can I finally now go to 8B?
Chair. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, or Mass DEP, recently announced updates to grant eligibility for a number of programs that our Board of Health in Tyngsborough regularly applies for and utilizes as part of services offered to residents and the community at large. The updates from Mass DEP include a replacement of their prior buy recycled policy notification requirement, and that eligible municipalities now approve a new environmental preferable procurement EPP or sustainable purchasing policy. This policy must have a minimum of the following criteria, which you'll find in the draft policy before you this evening. Of the inclusions, there must be a commitment to purchasing products and services offered through the Operational Services Division, Environmentally Preferable Products and Services Program whenever feasible, a commitment to reducing waste by prioritizing reuse and donation of goods and equipment, and purchasing products that are durable, reusable, and refillable, and then adherence to the federal comprehensive procurement guidelines or other established criteria for minimal accepted recycled content levels when purchasing office supplies. The draft policy for your review and approval was drafted utilizing a combination of policies drafted by other local municipalities without restricting the ability of town departments from acquiring supplies and materials that they need. Simply put, this policy is designed to focus on a reuse and recycle mindset when purchasing supplies for the town. What it does not do is mandate that we spend any money that we would not normally spend or spend more for the same type of products, or change the way that we realistically already operate. Essentially, all things being equal, when purchasing supplies, the town would commit to purchasing environmentally preferable options if and when available. In order to remain eligible for the grant programs that we already utilize by Mass DEP, the policy would need to be approved on or before June 1st, 2026, which would take place for fiscal year 2027. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Right, so open up to questions. Select Person Coughlin.
Yeah, thank you. So how many grants and what's the dollar amount sort of potentially being impacted by this?
Sorry, I'm on mute. I don't have that information in front of me this evening, and if it's helpful for the board, I'm happy to work with our health director to pull the information historically and get that information to you. So if you're not comfortable approving it this evening, I will certainly pull it. That being said, I lost my train of thought. Ultimately,
Mr. Chair,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Colin.
This is one grant program. It's the RDP Recycle Dividends Program. The town gets about $7,000 a year to use on any trash or recycling related initiative. The town has had a policy just like this in effect for, I've been with the town 7 years. For 7 years, the language has slightly changed. We are not required to submit a list of what we purchased to the state. We don't have to submit, the state doesn't do an audit. And maybe I shouldn't admit this in case the state is watching. Sean and I certainly don't go back and check that departments are adhering to this. We always buy the cheapest product. This policy just says that when shopping, if there is a cheaper product or equal cost product that is recyclable, that we would opt to buy that. But it's one grant, it's about $7,000 a year. And we've traditionally used it for any type of recycling. We've used it for the Household Hazardous Waste Day. We've used it for the Health and Safety Fair that the Board of Health started doing a couple of years ago, but it's just that one grant.
And to confirm, based on what Colin said as well, this is not really a change to what we're doing. We're not changing how we operate at any point. It is a language change to policies already put in place by Mass DEP in the past.
Yeah, but so what's going on by June 1st? I feel like that there might be a little like strong arming here by the state. I could be wrong. And then I actually looked at the environmentally preferable products and services program, right? So if we're not purchasing from them, would the state do anything, right? And also, if we had all things being equal, would we look at these products and do like a cost benefit analysis or something along those lines? Like if we were to purchase from this list, would it ultimately be costing the town more? And we say no now, but what happens after June 1st? I don't know. I'm just not sure. Like, I think there's a lot of unknowns for me, at least.
Sure. The June 1st deadline is really to approve the policy to keep us eligible for the grant. So if we don't institute this policy, we're still not going to change anything with the way that we procure office supplies or anything to that matter. There will still be no changes for us whether we approve or don't approve this. It's really just, are we eligible for the grant or not? The language in the policy and also the requirements from the state are intentionally vague to allow for the most flexibility from the town to continue, so which will continue to allow us to continue purchasing the least expensive products as we're currently doing. So we still would not change that whether we adopt this policy or not.
Because it will be ultimately up to the town, correct?
Exactly. The control in what we purchase continues to lie exclusively with the town.
I share Select Person Coughlin's concern anytime the state issues these mandates.
Yes.
The one thing I'll say is, again, we've been doing it this policy's been existing at least for 7 years. The state we never submit documentation. We never sign a form attesting that we only bought environmentally friendly products. And we always buy the cheapest product, regardless of what it is. And so certainly, though, I would likely not be recommending that we advance with this if there was some sort of audit tied to it. There isn't. We generally just distribute once a year. I distribute the policy that was adopted by this board 7 years ago to staff, reminding them that where possible and if more economically advantageous to purchase environmentally friendly products. But there's no, I mean, again, I probably shouldn't be admitting this on live TV, but here we are.
Thank you. Select Person Cohen.
Well, I think Sean and Colin both touched upon this point. This does not state that we have to buy anything in particular that's sustainable. It does not do that. And as Colin said, we can buy whatever we wish, and we usually buy, well, most always out buy the lowest cost. We are not edited. This is just something that, the state mandates that we do, as it relates to grants. This doesn't change the policy that we have today. So nothing's going to change. We can still buy whichever product we want. Just says kind of keep in mind that if it's sustainable, look at it. That's all it does. It doesn't demand that we buy anything in particular. And that's the key point. And if I really listened to today, I wish I would have counted the number of times we talked about grants. It must have been at least 4 or 5 different times we talked about grants. We get a lot of money for grants. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And this is just one of them where we just, we write the policy to meet the, what the state is requesting. In this case, we are fortunate that it's not demanding that we do anything in particular. And like Colin said, it doesn't, we're not audited or anything else. So I see no reason not to support this. There's some people out there that don't feel that grants benefit this town as much as I do, I guess. When you get over $2 million in grants and a lot of work goes into that, we do what we can to try to get the grants within that, and making sure that, in this case, we can purchase whatever we wish. That's the bottom line. So, I guess that's the only thing I'll say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it was covered in the last thing. So we're not really changing what we're doing. We are codifying what we're doing to formalize and memorialize things that we already have as policies. I also think that it's important that there's some key items that are in here that we do, right? We do try to reduce waste, and we do try to prioritize reuse and donation of goods in town. Those are some of the best things that happen in town. So formalizing that, I don't see a problem with it. I did raise my antenna did go up. You know, whenever the state tells you have to do something, I sit there and say, hang on a second, what are we doing here? So that's why it's, it was important to understand that it's not changing what we're doing. The pieces that are required are reasonable, and don't have any cost impacts. If as much as I love recycle and reuse, and one of the things that I appreciate about our sustainability committee is that they'll say if it doesn't make fiscal sense, don't go and waste money just to go through and have some of these things. They've always been very fiscally responsible and understanding of those items. So I'm in favor of continuing what we've been doing, codifying this a little bit more and formalizing it, and then addressing the requirements that these are reasonable requirements as opposed to some of the other requirements we may be getting from the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Gilchrist.
Yeah, I think this is a weird one, and I think, the board seems to share the sentiment that I think it would be better if it were not being sort of delivered to us by the state this way. But certainly coming into this meeting, there were some comments from residents, and I suspect that their concerns have been addressed in this conversation. I think there was an assumption that this was going to cost more, that we would lose some of our purchasing autonomy. Notes that I had made for myself coming into the meeting were, how do the prices compare? But it seems like that's really negligible. It's not a factor based on the way that we're actually structuring this. Um, and I've talked about this in other contexts, in other meetings. I think this is where I take issue with the term policy instead of best practice or procedure. And I know that that is not something that we're deciding, but I think calling it a policy makes it sound like it's a mandate and that it's strong arming us in a way that it sounds like it isn't in reality. So that's good. I think that's reassuring for me at least. Um, and another question that I had that I think, Colin, you mostly addressed was, how do the departments get trained on this process to make sure that they're following it? And it sounds like we just once a year send them a reminder that this is something that is expected of them and they should be following it, but there's no audit to say that they are or are not. We currently have pretty strict process for purchasing in general, right? Like state procurement and like strategic sourcing requires us to follow certain RFP process, and we are intended to use certain vendors. So how do these things reconcile with each other?
Generally, in Collins, the MCPPO, he's our chief procurement officer, so I'm happy to defer to him. But just generally speaking, procurement, it really depends on the cost threshold of what you're procuring. So there are different levels depending on whether it's services, whether it's supplies, whether it's a building, whether it's construction. It's unfortunately, in Massachusetts, fairly complicated, and you have to go through a lot of classes to sort it out. But basically, based on the cost threshold, there are different procedures that are in place for whether you're just getting quotes, whether you're using best practices where you don't have to get quotes, but you should be, looking out for the best price things, or whether you have to issue a IFB or a RFP like we discussed earlier today. For office supplies, once we get to, a certain threshold, then you have to start soliciting quotes. But generally, it's just looking for the best priced items.
Okay, and this seems to fall in line with those expectations.
Exactly. It's very consistent with how we already operate and what state law for procurement allows for as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say I feel comfortable signing it, even if I think it's kind of silly that it needs to be this way. But this isn't a departure from what we're doing, so I'm comfortable with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And so my thoughts are two. One, I see this policy as just trying to reinforce a mindset that we should always be thinking about our environment whenever we do anything. But the two most important words in this policy are whenever feasible. And so, but when I read that, I say, okay, fine. Then I agree that we should reiterate to people when they're buying things, you should consider sustainability and environmental impact all the time. We all should. But whenever feasible, we'll change our buying habits. But in most cases, whenever feasible means we're going to just continue to do what we're doing. Perhaps I'm a bit naive. I don't get scared when the state initiates something and asks us to do something, if it makes sense. In this case, it makes sense that you consider the reusability, the refillability, the sustainability of products when we purchase them. I think it's incumbent upon all of us. So that's all I have to say about that. So, Mr. Eldridge, do you want to make a motion?
Yes. Yes, I do. Hang on, my video's off for some reason.
Yeah,
Please
there
do.
you go. There you
Please
are.
do. I move that the select board approves the sustainable purchasing policy as presented.
What a tongue twister that was. Second.
Just for me.
Second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. We'll roll call vote. Select person Coughlin.
I'm not in favor.
Okay. Select person Cohane.
In favor.
Select person Eldridge.
In favor.
Select person Gilfus.
In favor.
And I am also in favor. That passes 4-1. Okay, we move on. Ratify contract approvals. For
Thank
the
you, Mr.
Director of
Chair.
People.
At the select board's last meeting, it met in executive session pursuant to exemption 2 of the open meeting law to consider and approve 2 contracts with non-union employees. While the Town Manager Act gives the negotiating authority to the town manager, it requires final approval by the select board. Under the open meeting law, any approval done in executive session has to be ratified in a public meeting. The first one is a contract renewal for our fire chief. Attached to the memo is a contract between the town and Fire Chief Wes Russell for the next 3 fiscal years. The renewal aligns with union and non-union contracts that have been settled in the last year, and while still on the low end of the range for comparable communities, is well within the range of salaries for fire chiefs in similar sized communities. Notable changes for this contract include 3.5% COLAs, amending the longevity benefits slightly to match existing collective bargaining agreements, and implementing the performance incentive that we've been adding to both union and non-union contracts going back 2 years now. The term of that contract runs from July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2029.
Thank you. I will open it up to the board for questions. We have discussed this contract in executive session in the past, but let's start with Select Person Coughlin.
Yeah, no, I don't have any questions on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Cohane.
No questions.
Select Person Eldridge.
I'm good, thank you.
You're better than good. Select Person Gilfus.
No questions.
And I have no questions either. Mr. Eldridge, do you want to do us a
Yes.
favor?
Mr.
Thank you.
Chair, I move that the select board ratify the fire chief's contract as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Select Person Coughlin.
In favor.
Select Person Cohane.
In favor.
Select Person Eldridge.
In favor.
Select Person Gilfus.
In favor.
And I am also in favor. That passes 5-0-0. Colin.
Thank you. The next one is a contract for the Director of People and Culture. As I've announced previously, following the resignation of Bridget Bell, who left us last month to pursue a job with the state, I promoted Jacqueline Schnacker to the role of Director of People and Culture. As the board is aware, as aware and approved. As a part of that transition, we carry the same contract provisions in recognition of Jackie's service to Tyngsborough and the fact that we saw a seamless transition. While the salaries for year 1 and 2 were set because they had been previously negotiated, we added language that the final year would be negotiated next winter. One of the future items is to talk about the budget. So with the uncertainty, we thought it was prudent to leave that to be negotiated in the future. All of the provisions are the same, and the term of this contract runs through June 30th, 2028.
Thank you. Open up to questions. Select Person Coughlin,
I have no questions.
Select Person Cohen,
No questions.
Select Person Eldridge,
No questions.
Select Person Gilfus,
No questions.
and I have no questions. So, Select Person Eldridge, you want to make a motion?
I would love to, and I will make a comment. I didn't have a question, but I forgot to. Jackie's going to be great in this role. So I move
Absolutely.
that the select board ratify the Director of People and Culture's contract as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Select Person Coughlin,
In favor.
Select Person Cohen,
In favor.
Select Person Eldridge,
In favor.
Select Person Gilfus,
In favor.
and I am also in favor. That passes 5-0-0. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to old business, which is the fiscal year 2027 budget update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this board knows, we will have a more detailed joint meeting with the school department on Monday, February 2nd, so a week from now. We'll get that posted and agenda shortly, but the only purpose of that meeting will be to talk about budget planning for fiscal year 27. So tonight, I'm just giving you an update on the presentation I made last week, so I'll be brief, but please stop me at any point with questions. So as of January 24th, we're projecting a $1.45 million deficit in fiscal year 2027. On a positive front, on Saturday, we learned that the highest health insurance rate increase for the trust that we're a part of will be 14.4%. That's the highest point in the range. Because we were told we would see the highest prior to Saturday, that's what I've changed in the budget. It is possible that we'll see something slightly lower, but I'm expecting that we'll be at that 14.4. The big drop from the 25 that we were originally told was because the insurance trust has decided to stop covering the GLP-1s for weight loss. So those are the Ozempics and such. We've talked before about how those are incredibly expensive. So outside of the town's control, we don't decide what the insurance company covers, but the trust decided that it would no longer cover it. Eliminating that allowed them, I guess, to meet lower increases. So you may remember we previously budgeted 25%. So the positive news is now we're down to 14.4%, which is a big victory. Again, we've talked about these other factors: slower than anticipated new growth, increasing utility costs, and again, the budget includes that $900,000 for the middle school. This slide is a little less relevant now that it's not as dramatic, but in a previous meeting, the board asked to see kind of scenario based around health insurance. So what you're seeing is for fiscal year 2025, we budgeted 4.4 million. That represented a 5% increase over fiscal year 24. In dollar amounts, that was 208,000. This current fiscal year 26, as you all remember, we saw a 17% increase, which represented $741,297. Now, on average, these plans generally go up. 8% is high, 5% is really what you're seeing, but I think we mentioned 8% in a previous meeting. So I was asked to demonstrate, had fiscal year 26 increased only at 8%, that would have been a $350,000 increase. So you can see there's a big delta there. In 2027, our original projection was the 25%. That's the $1.3 million increase, but we're going to scrap that column. I had already put it in there before I got the numbers. We're actually at the 14.4% increase, which is that 5.9. That represents a $738,000 increase. But what these last two columns show is that had we seen 8% increases year over year, starting with fiscal 25, we actually would only be looking at a $378,000 increase. So really, this slide just demonstrates how these dramatic increases compound over time. But again, I will walk away with 14.4 happy that it's not the 25% that we were originally expecting. Still, looking ahead, 14% is also not a sustainable increase, not just for the town, but also for our employees. So we've talked before how we've been working with a consultant. Unfortunately, given our high loss ratio, the 3 insurance carriers that we requested a quote from declined to cover us, which is not totally unsurprising. And we didn't have much faith that that exercise was going to result in anything more than a point or two in a reduction. So the fact that we're starting at the 14.4 makes it slightly more palatable. Long term, I've said to this board, and we've talked to staff and will continue, our really only remaining option is to switch to the Group Insurance Commission. Their average increases is in that 8% range. They offer more plans, but admittedly, there's less control on the town side. Everybody has a different opinion about their health insurance company, so I won't go into whether or not it's the best option, but it really is the only one. We've talked about how regional insurance plans have all collapsed. We were part of one prior to 2018. Tyngsborough certainly isn't large enough to create its own health insurance trust. So we either stick with what we have, which is Maya, and I guess it's possible that the economy around health insurance changes, or we start to look real serious at the Group Insurance Commission. That's an exercise that we will undertake, even though, again, we saw a 14% increase. We're still going to undertake that exercise. It involves working with the unions, working with the Group Insurance Commission. And so I won't have a substantial update on that till probably closer to June or July, but all of that effort would be for fiscal year 28, not 27 anyway. New growth. So we've talked about this, but I wanted to demonstrate kind of how the economy has changed and what that did to our new growth expectations. So there are still some larger projects that we hope will happen, that are permitted, that we expect will happen at some point, but their timing is uncertain simply because of utility constraints. So 89 Kendall Road, that's the warehouse project. They've commenced construction and are working at warp speed to construct their smaller building, but their larger building is stalled because there's an electricity issue. There's not enough capacity for some of the tenants that they were courting. The 84 Kendall Road Assisted Living Project, we've talked ad nauseum about this. They are challenged by a lack of sewer capacity, which can be addressed by working with 89 Kendall, but can't be addressed until 89 Kendall builds their larger warehouse. So the delays to one is causing a delay to another. Other projects that we had been anticipating have either stalled completely or are abandoned. There's been repeated conversations over the last 5 years about a potential mixed-use development at Flint's Corner. That hasn't really gone anywhere, and it's been quite some time since we've had serious conversations with the developer about that. And then 405 Middlesex Road. This is in between the this is in between Epigram rather, and the commercial condos where the power lines are. There was talk about developing the backside of that parcel into a large warehouse. In fact, there was a permit granted by the planning board to do so. We've talked about how warehouses are not as hot as they were when that project was proposed. And so we've been told by the developer that a warehouse is not going there. There's been some other ancillary uses. At one point, Dunkin' Donuts sought to build a retail pad in the front, and a battery storage facility has looked at it, although not gone anywhere. So that's another large project that we had hoped would happen, but never came to fruition. And then, on that same token, some of the projections that the board saw in 2023 haven't been met simply because the economy shifted. We talked about warehouses not being as appealing as they once were. I don't want to spend too much time because I admittedly am not the creator or owner of this first slide, the slide showing the new growth that you saw in May of 2023. But you can see that it lists a lot of the projects that we've talked about, as well as our confidence level at the time, and then our projected new growth. That new growth is the tax value that we don't have on the tax roll today, or in May of 2023 when this was created, that would be added. A couple weeks ago, we sat down with Lauren Wolkel, who's our chief assessor, Ben, who's our town planner and our building commissioner, and we reviewed those. We were able to eliminate some that weren't going to happen. We obviously took ones off of here that we've already captured, but you can see these highlighted, the 5 that are highlighted. Those numbers in today's economy aren't realistic. And so there's a variety of reasons that would go into this, but 98 Kendall Road, light manufacturing, 707,000. That would be, that value would represent a warehouse that far exceeds the size of that parcel or our capacity in Tyngsborough. Now, you'll see that it's got a 0% confidence level because there's not a permitted project. It's never come through. But all of these shifts have meant that we didn't realize the new growth that we had hoped to realize. And it's largely because the economy shifted, projects didn't develop as quickly as they could. And so when we talk about new growth, it's an it's an evolving conversation, and we aren't allowed to tax. We're very specifically allowed to tax for the fair market value based on a whole complicated set of criteria. And so that's where the actual numbers come from. So again, I just wanted to demonstrate that there are a lot of projects in the queue. Some are substantial, but many of them are stalled due to reasons that aren't within the town's control. And then some of them, their values have shifted since May of 2023. It's not going to change where we are today. We are where we are. But seeing this can kind of help you understand how maybe we thought we'd be in a more positive situation than we truly are. What I really wanted to dive into today is the work that we've done on our zero-based expenditure exercise. This is what I told the board we were embarking on when I first announced the deficit at your last meeting. To remind everybody, what we did was we went to every department head and we said, okay, start from scratch, zero out every single one of your expense lines, and then only add back items that are in contract, things that you're contractually obligated to have. And then we had follow-up meetings with department heads where we put things back in their budget that were absolutely critical to their service. And so in doing so, as of the end of last week, we've identified $425,000 worth of cuts simply on the expense side of general government to eat away at our share of the deficit. Now, to be clear, and the select board received today, I think, a 20-page report from me that demonstrated each department and each line item and how much we cut from that line item and what that means. So I'm saying that I can cut $425,000 and still deliver relatively the same service. But as you'll see in that report, there are certainly some cuts we've made that will have a visible impact to residents. And so what I anticipate will happen is that we'll split it up in half because it's a very long report. But at your meeting on February 9th, I'll cover the first half of it to see if the select board has feedback. You may say, hey, listen, you're proposing cutting $3,000 out of this line item. That would be catastrophic. We want you to put it back in, and then I'll have to go back to the drawing board. But I want this to be a collaborative process whereby the board says, you got a little carried away there, put a little bit of it back in. And I want you and the public, we'll publish this report. As I said to the board, we're still ironing out some of the details, so we'll probably publish it a little later this week. But one of you, I think it was Select Person Eldridge, pointed out that this is the town's budget. So I want people to see that we can do this, but here's what you should expect. So I'm not going to cover that tonight because it's too lengthy and you all just saw it. How do we move forward? So the school committee and the select board will have a joint meeting on the 2nd. And I expect that that will be a good opportunity for this board to get an insight into the budget planning that the Tyngsborough Public Schools have been doing for the last few months. Unless I'm told otherwise by the select board, our budget, when you look at it, has largely been 60% goes toward education, 40% toward general government. When I say the 60%, it's not scientific. It's probably higher than that 60%, but this is the easiest way to split it. That represents the direct general fund money that goes to the Tyngsborough Public Schools, plus the cost of health insurance, which is on the town side. So for the last couple of years, we've been breaking down how your tax dollars are spent. And in that workshop, you can see that 80% of the health insurance is for school employees. The remainder is for town employees. When you factor that in, just those two, the general fund contribution to the schools and the health insurance, it's about 60%. So with that in mind, to make sure that I was working towards somewhat of a goal for this deficit, I've been working with our staff to find 40% of that $1.45 million deficit. It was $2 million, it went down to 1.45, which is a blessing. The select board can certainly, after its meeting on the 2nd, direct me to do otherwise, but this is historically how the budget has been handled. And, as a reminder, we have certainly not me, but also not the select board. We give the school department the money that is available for schools, and they have complete line item autonomy on how they spend it. All I can do is say that I have to present to you by the Town Manager Act and by state law a balanced budget based on the revenues we expect to receive. And so I've simply applied the 60-40 that we've traditionally done to the revenues that we expect to have, which aren't ideal. And so that's where we are today. So this isn't some agreement, it's not some legal order. It's just the way that we've been doing things. I have to give you a balanced budget. We're making tough cuts on this side. I know that the school department has been hard at work making tough decisions on their end as well. However, the board directs me to proceed is how I will proceed. But at the end of the day, I have to give the select board a balanced budget to advance the town meeting. And so this is the approach that I've taken. If you look here in this very last slide, of that 1.45 million, applying a 60-40 split, 872,000 of that would represent school funding that would otherwise go to the schools. 581 represents funding that would otherwise come to the general government, public safety, public works, any non-school department. The positive news is that of the town share, and again, this isn't scientific, it's just what I'm working toward, we found that 426,000, which leaves 155 left. We'll talk more at your February 9th meeting about some of the cuts I've proposed. Depending on how that goes, I will be prepared at your February 9th or your last February meeting to identify, more serious things that can be done to close that $155,000 gap. David and I are meeting tomorrow to do our quarterly revenue review. So some of that may shift. Again, revenue is always a moving target, but this is where we stand today. I wanted to demonstrate to the board that we've been hard at work on our side, trying to find places where we can make this work. And again, just emphasize for the taxpayers at home that they will see a balanced budget. It's required by law, and that's the direction that, I'll be following.
Thank you, Colin. That was a good presentation. I'll open it up to board for any questions. Person Coughlin?
Yeah, I just had one question, but first I want to say that this is exceptional work and it can't be easy. I mean, it seems very daunting. But so the difference between the 581, 944 and the 425 is the expectation that you're going to be sort of lessening that gap by February 9th? Is that like what are those next steps, I guess, to get to that?
Great question. So the final goal is that something in the budget, the general government side, $155,000 worth, I will have to cut before I present a balanced budget. Based on the feedback that you all give me on the report that I gave you today in our meeting on February 9th, that number might shift. If some of you look at some of the cuts and say, this is incredibly ridiculous, you've got to put some of this back in. And so depending on where that lands, that number could change. At your February 9th meeting, or in all likelihood, your last February meeting, anything beyond this 426, 425 will result in service impacts. And so those are conversations that I want to have with the select board first. So we'll have your meeting on the 9th where we talk about the cuts that I made in that 425. If there are some that you don't want me to make, then the 155 goes up. And then at the meeting at your last February meeting, I'll present kind of the more drastic cuts that could be made to get feedback from you. I don't want to just hand down a decision and say, this is what we're going to cut. But anything beyond this 425 will result in a reduction in services in some form, unless, again, something dramatic shifts either in our assessment for the VOC or revenue. The governor announced this weekend a modest increase in state aid. It's certainly not going to close the gap. It might help slightly. But so that's kind of how I envision this will move forward. That 155, in other words, is just something that the board's going to have to decide where you want to make those service cuts.
But you're not going back to the drawing board. Like, you're not having like the Council of Aging at this point. That's just an example, going back to the drawing board to say, hey, I'm going to need more cuts. Are you at that point right now still, or?
No, good question. Sorry, I'm rambling here and not being concise. The point that we're at right now, we have identified all the cuts that we can make without reducing the services residents get.
Okay.
To close that $155,000 gap, we will have to make cuts to services. And I want that to be a collaborative conversation between the board and myself, most likely at your last February meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And I do almost want to say 155, I know, like, in our own personal lives, that's a big number. In the scope of this budget, the fact that we got to 155, we're not talking about, that 155 doesn't represent shutting down the library a day or shutting down the Council on Aging. There are cuts, people will notice them, but we're not talking about anything drastic. I just think it should be collaborative between the select board and myself, as opposed to me telling you, hey, this is how we're going to get there.
And what have some of those been in the past? Some of these shortcuts in these instances.
So unfortunately and unfortunately, we've not found ourselves in this situation as long as I've been here. In this current budget, fiscal year 26, we had an easy out. We were able to eliminate any of the general fund contribution to the roads program. That was a $300,000 cut that fortunately we made up because Chapter 90 was increased by more than 300,000. So nobody saw the impact. But even if Chapter 90 wasn't increased, that wasn't a daily service that people would have had to see reduced. So this is the first time in recent history that we find ourselves in this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Select Person Cohen.
Well, now the way Adele asked that question, yeah, we haven't run into this in the past. We've increased revenue. I mean, over $1 million in the marijuana. We have the billboard, which adds another, I believe it's $200,000 plus a year. You've heard about the grants over and over again. And when you read Colin's thing, some of those grants are helping a little bit on the operations side too, in a few different areas. So we've done that. We've really reduced OpEx in particular area, annual operating expenses in a lot of different areas. Very proud of those. Some of those have taken forever. Colin will tell you the watering system of the elementary school. It was a 5-year project. They kept telling us, no, we go, there's got to be a way, and we kept going after it. So we've been very diligent. We haven't been in this situation. Colin didn't mention that all the towns around us have been in this situation for 2 or 3 years. We've been in really good financial shape, I guess, until this point. Now we have a deficit, and we've done a lot, which is going to help, but we're still in this situation, and we have to close this gap. And as I've talked to Colin many times, there's really only, there's only 2 ways we can do this. We can either go through these cuts, or we can go for a 2.5 override. And I believe that the last meeting, although I wasn't at, I did hear it. I believe I heard everybody say, keep going, Colin, try to do the cuts. We don't really want a 2.5 override. And Colin asked us earlier, what's the message? And to me, that's my message. I don't want a 2.5 override. We have to keep digging. We have to keep working at this budget, and we have to get it basically under control. A $1.4 million deficit, we just have to resolve it. What we've seen for other towns, when they don't resolve it when it first happens, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And now they are in really tough shape. So I believe we really do have to keep going and resolve this. And again, Colin, the message is just keep going what you're doing. And it will be a tough discussion. Some of the cuts that you had, how many pages is it, Colin? I think it was, I don't remember now. It was quite a few pages that he had.
Almost 20.
Almost 20 pages. And I reviewed them today. And some of them are going to be things that residents aren't going to like. There's some things that, they won't see. But we just have to keep going. We have to keep digging, and it'll be a very interesting conversation with the school. And I believe Colin's already kind of given them the same message. It's we're at where we're at, and now we have to figure out how to move forward. And at least what I heard before, what I believe now is we just need to make the cuts. We need to get this budget, get to a point where we can go to town meeting. And it's in balance.
Thank you. Select Person Eldridge.
Thank you. Yeah, just to expand upon that, what Select Person Cohen said very well. One, I'm not going to push for any override on this, no operational override. I won't vote for one. But I think this is what happens when you have Prop 2.5 that limits taxes going up 2.5, but we've had inflation that was higher than 2.5. And as you saw, as Colin showed, with health insurance through the roof, it's there, and we're going to have to make some cuts, and it's going to be a little bit of pain, but as Mr. Cohen said, it's not as painful as it would be if you kick the can down the road and you don't address these things head on. So, I think it's important for residents. I saw some stuff online because the Lowell Sun had an article on this. I think it's important for us to be transparent. We've been talking about it for years, that transparency during this process is important. We are being transparent with this, and we're letting people know early on. Some people might overreact, and I think they need to understand this is how you make the sausage. And sometimes it gets a little bit ugly in how some of these things are. But we're not going to go through and surprise people by these things. I think it's important for us to communicate as we go through this process. There's been some other towns that they remove trash from the mix to save things. Saw it in Drake, you see it in Westford. Some of these things those costs have gone through the roof too. We're trying to not have any of those things happen. We're going to say, hey, these are the core services that we need to provide, and we're going to maintain those. We have to see what we can do in order to do that. So I think it's important for residents to, one, understand what's going on, and it is their budget. And I think it's important for us to be transparent throughout this process. It's not an easy time to be doing municipal budgets. I guess good news, bad news is you have to have a balanced budget. You can't go through and put something that doesn't balance. So we already know what our marching orders are going to be. How we get there, I think that's where we just need to work collectively between individual departments, with the school, and a variety of other folks to go through and figure out, okay, how do we make this work within this current the current climate, because we're not going to get help from the state on any of this stuff. Anything we get from the state is going to be minor in this fiscal year. So I appreciate the efforts, Colin, in digging into some of those items. I think it's great on the health insurance that it wasn't as high as we thought. It's still 14.4%, and it's a big number. So it's one of those things that we're just going to have to deal with and figure out how we make it work as best we can. So thank you for the efforts. I'm getting down from my soapbox.
Thank you. Person Gilfus.
I'm going to jump up on the soapbox. I think that we are all glad to see that the health insurance increase is at a lower rate than we had been warned about. I think it represents 500,000 savings, right? Is that the difference between the two numbers ish? I do want to express frustration and sadness that means that our health insurance company is going to not be covering GLP-1s, because I know that is a life-changing, prescription access, and this is going to detrimentally affect people that are using those types of prescription medications. But that's not something that we can control. That's a choice that our healthcare provider has made, and we're certainly not alone there. Almost all major health insurance companies have made that decision this year also. But I do want to just acknowledge that for every win that we get, it's a loss someplace else. So I'm glad that isn't a factor in our budget, but it's still unfortunate at the end of the day. Looking at the rest of the information that Colin provided, and the 20-page report that we got today, which we'll go over in another meeting, I found that to be a really helpful exercise to see the places where we found that 425,000, I think that was the number, because it really is so granular. You know, we're talking about $600 here, $400 here, 1,000 here. I mean, and some of them are big ticket items, 15,000, 20,000, but that's representing, you know, really significant items that maybe aren't considered part of basic town functions, but certainly would, you know, I trust that those departments were asking for that money in their budget because they had a vision for what that service could look like for residents. So um, I think this exercise is really hard. You know, there's no clear path. There's no easy answer here, and that's why it's taking us months to get to it, to get through it. But I agree. I think being transparent and showing residents that we literally are, you know, weighing services against each other, and items that were in the budget are cut. And at some point, and I think Select Person Coughlin, this really was the beginning of the conversation, which is that 185,000 that remains as our part of the 40% of the budget, the budget deficit. We're going to need to find that someplace, right? We have to end with a balanced budget. So does that mean further services are cut in order to reach that number? Or how else do we find that money? And I don't know what that looks like yet. I think, you know, that's still work that continues. And certainly we today in this meeting have an expectation that the school is going to be able to identify 872,000 as their 60% share. I have no sense of what that exercise is going to look like for them because we don't see their line item budget. That certainly seems like an intimidating amount of money to find, but I don't know. So I look forward to that conversation with the school committee and folks from the school department. And I suppose theoretically, I'll just say this into the universe. If they were to find 872,000 plus 185,000 in cuts, then perhaps they would be generous and cover our portion of that 40% that we have yet to identify. I'm just going to say that out loud and we can manifest that. But I think it's tough. I think it's really tough, and I'm grateful to you, Colin, for doing this work and having these difficult conversations with the department heads. One thing that you and I talked about, and I just want to say, sort of, for the people watching at home, the two people in the audience right now, that the numbers that you have presented to us right now with the updated budget proposal is with the sign off from the department heads, that while I'm sure that each of them is not happy to have their budget need to be cut, at least this is coming with the input and as much of a seal of approval as we can get in a tough situation. And I hope that that reassures us as people who, you know, I'm not the person that knows what the DPW needs. There's a reason why we have a head of the DPW, right? Each of those people in their role has the specialized knowledge and knows the services and knows the impact to our residents because that's their role. And so we're here to hopefully listen to their feedback and trust that if they're saying that these are places where we can cut in order to make the budget work and without impacting basic town functions, um, you know, that's helpful for me. Like, that's reassuring to know that the department heads have done this exercise and that it's not just us going in and slashing budgets without any sort of concept of what the impact of that is. And in my select board report, I will talk about this a little bit more about the conversations that I had with the library. But I think it's interesting, you know, the report that Colin shared today, the only department as of right now that has not finalized their sign off in the revised budget is the library. And there's some specific complexities there that I'll talk about in my report. But I think it's interesting, like, Colin isn't presenting us with a number to represent the library and saying, we could do this. And then, Kathy, the director of the library, doesn't endorse that plan. Instead, Colin is showing us what we can feel confident about and said, let's wait until we finish this conversation with the library before I give it to you. So, despite how difficult these conversations are and how much work this requires, I do feel confident that the data that we're getting is going to be useful for us to make informed decisions. So, yeah, as much as we're the people that need to sign off on the budget, that's part of our call. I'm glad that it's coming from a place of being informed and the department heads are contributing to that. So thank you, Colin, for the work there.
Thank you. And I won't belabor this. I think most of us have brought out all the points. I've looked in detail, Colin, at your report. There's some items I don't agree with. There's a lot of items I do agree with. We'll talk about those next time we get together. Just as an overall thought, though, I do get worried when we put off things like maintenance and training. It's easy to try to just cut those now. Nothing's easy. I take it back. Nothing is easy to do, but those are easy pickings. We just won't do maintenance on certain items. That comes back later on to haunt us oftentimes. And maybe you don't do some maintenance this year, but that means next year you're probably paying more for it. So it makes the cut more difficult in the following year. Same thing with training. But anyways, I'll leave it at that. I appreciate the work you've done, Colin. I love the granularity. I have gone through it in painstaking detail. Yeah, the next step will be harder, but I have no doubt that we'll get to a balanced budget. So that's all I have to say about that. Okay, we've been at this for a while tonight. Select board reports. Select person Coughlin, you want to start us off?
Yeah, just I know that this was in Colin's report, but a week from tomorrow is a special election, so come on out and vote.
Thank you. Select person Cohane.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Select person Eldridge.
I don't have anything this evening.
Wow. So thank you. And select person Gilfis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just wanted to share that not this past week, but the week before, the Board of Library Trustees invited our chair, Mr. Schneider, to attend their monthly meeting and talk about just how things are going and sort of share their perspective with us as a select board. Unfortunately for him, but fortunately for me, Mr. Schneider wasn't available, so I was able to attend on his behalf. And again, full disclosure, my wife does serve on the Board of Library Trustees, and that was also disclosed in that meeting. So there is no conflict of interest occurring here. But I found it really, really valuable to sit in on the conversations that they were having about budget. They knew that this conversation was coming from Colin. They knew that this exercise about zeroing out the budget was underway. And so a lot of the conversation over the course of the meeting was about what services do we consider to be essential library services? And this is going to be really hard for the library, particularly because there are some Massachusetts regulations that in order to have state certification, you need to meet certain criteria. And for a community our size, which is, I think it's like between 10,000 and 14,999 residents. So we fall in there. 16% of our total budget needs to go to the, let me make sure I get this right. 16% of our total operating budget needs to cover library materials. And library materials is basically like things that are not infrastructure or salaries. So it could be books and media and digital resources and licensing for ebooks, things like that. That all contributes. It used to be physical books that were going on shelves at the library, so you can imagine that would be much harder for us to hit. But we even today do not meet that 16%. And we have, I don't know that we ever have. And because we fall under the 16% for that certification requirement, we every year have to file for essentially a waiver with the state to say, here's the budget situation in our town. Here's like in good faith what we're doing as a library and as a community to prove that the library is important. And so we have been, for the last several years, been given that waiver. But in the past, I think it was 2017 maybe, we actually lost our certification. And so the state didn't certify us. And I think it took several years, maybe like 4 years, for us to get out of that decertification period. And it's much harder to get out of once we fall into it. So the library's perspective on the budget is really, we cannot fall below this certain threshold, because then we're in trouble. And I certainly am not the best person to speak about this. Maybe we should invite Kathy to come, speak on it. But the things that really stood out for me, if we were to lose our state certification, the two things that stood out, we would lose our ability to participate in the Middlesex Valley Library Consortium. So we wouldn't have interlibrary loan, which I know that I rely on very heavily. It's very easy to look on the MVLC app to see what's in our consortium, and then it just gets sent to Tyngsborough when I pick up a book. We would only be able to have Tyngsborough residents take out books in the Tyngsborough library, what's on the shelf. We would not be able to go to Chelmsford or another community in our consortium and take out books there as a consortium member. And we would lose our ability to have ebooks through services like Libby, which I rely on very heavily. And so, those are two things that for me really stood out, that if we were to lose our certification, we're losing access to a tremendous amount of resources and materials that currently our residents have access to. There's a number of things that factor into this, including like the number of hours that we are open. The library is currently open 40 hours a week, and that is the minimum threshold. If we were to go under that, we risk losing our certification. So as Colin was saying, like when we're getting into that place where we're talking about service cuts, if we were to say, we want to cut library hours in order to save money on salary or, whatever that looks like, there's such a downstream impact risk to that. Like it's not just saving that little bit of money, it's potentially losing a significant amount of services. So all of that is to say, I'm really grateful that I attended the meeting. It was really, really valuable. They seem to appreciate having someone from the select board be there and give them an ear. And so I hope that we continue to do this. I hope that other boards invite us to come and visit and hear from them, because it was a great use of an evening. And yeah, kudos to our library staff and the Board of Library Trustees for doing tough work, but to make sure that we continue to have that access that we have now. So thank you, Mr. Schneider, for being unavailable.
Thank you. Thank you for filling in for me. I am sorry that I missed it because I really value the library. I did make a pledge to them that I would attend one of their future trustee meetings and continue that dialogue between the select board and the library trustees. So thank you. I don't have anything in particular for a select board report. So I will flip it over back to Mr. Eldridge and see if he can get us into an executive session.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that the board move into executive session under exemption 2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, finance director, assistant fire chief, and under exemption 3, which is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. SEIU Local 888 Mid-Managers and Clerical Union.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. A roll call vote. Select person Coughlin.
In favor.
Select person Cohen.
In favor.
Select person Eldridge.
In favor.
Select person Gilfus.
In favor.
And I am also in favor. Good night, everyone.